Oh, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow is underway from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Michael McHenry will be with us in 20 minutes. Major League Baseball analyst joins us. We'll break down all things on the diamond. John McLean covered the NFL for nearly 5 decades. He will join us in hour number 2 as he does each and every Tuesday. And John DeFilippo, longtime offensive coordinator in the NFL, really came to prominence whenever he was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at the time, I should say, quarterback coach for Nick Foles in that Super Bowl run for the Philadelphia Eagles. He'll join us. He's now a head coach in the USFL in hour number 3. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Big show ahead. All of them are big. We're going to treat this one like we treat every single show. Big. Bigly, to quote someone who's used that before. We're going to treat this show bigly today.
Bob Huggins still has a job right now. West Virginia released a statement right at the end of the show yesterday that said they would review everything from the president's office down. But with the homophobic slur that was used in the radio interview and the doubling down of it in the radio interview in Cincinnati, WLW 700, Chad, I'm stunned that we haven't seen them already relieve him of his duties, given the fact that we have great examples to point to of other organizations, other teams, other media outlets doing the exact same thing in the past.
Well, and I want to be consistent and as consistent as possible on this show. I'm anti-cancel culture. I'm anti-someone getting fired for saying something really stupid one time. Mm-hmm. Pretty consistent with that. So this is not me saying that West Virginia should absolutely fire Bob Huggins.
It's us saying we're surprised they haven't.
I'm not surprised. I'm shocked. I'm utterly shocked. Let's look at the differences here immediately. And there's a great piece up. I think Grayson Weir wrote it at OutKick, comparing Tom Brenneman, a buddy of Bob Huggins that he brought to West Virginia to speak to his program about owning your mistakes.
Like 6 months later.
Owning your mistakes, and this was probably about 3 years ago.
Where Tom Brenneman, pregame for a Cincinnati Reds broadcast,
was caught on a hot mic, not knowing he was on.
Yeah, saying where he was the slur capital of the world. And not only was he the Reds broadcaster, he was one of the voices for the NFL and Fox. He lost that job too. So I mean, we've seen examples of it. To your point, into what Grayson Weir wrote about.
Yeah, so that tie-in is interesting. Did not know about that until reading the piece at OutKick. But these are two very different examples. Same word, can't say that word, can't use it. Shouldn't use it, can't use it. Bob Huggins said it on a live radio interview when he knows that he's on a live radio interview. I'm not excusing what Tom Brenneman said, but Tom Brenneman is saying that to one of his coworkers when he thinks that his mic isn't on and he got burned by a hot mic. It happens. It's happened to many people before. It'll probably happen again. But Tom Brenneman was professionally executed on the spot. He came back and gave that very odd apology where a home run is hit in the middle of his apology. We've all seen the video of that by now as well, but fired immediately. So when I say I'm consistently anti-cancel culture, which I am, a lot of people aren't, I am consistent with that, of all kinds. I don't know that Bob Huggins should be fired for this. Now, if there is a recurring theme that we don't know about happening at West Virginia with this kind of language or other issues with Bob Huggins, I'm sure Dan Dockich can lay all of it out for you. He's doing it right now on Twitter and telling you all the problems with West Virginia and Bob Huggins. There's apparently a bunch that I didn't know about that people in the coaching community like Dan know about. Dan also knows a lot about West Virginia University. My conclusion is Bob Huggins not being fired may tell us more about West Virginia than it does Bob Huggins. Because I am convinced that 95% of schools in America would have fired him already. I'm not saying that's the right move. I'm telling you my honest opinion of what would have happened to Bob Huggins. I think he would have been fired before midnight last night after this happened at almost every school. What if Bob Huggins said Catholic bleeps while he was the head coach at Gonzaga or Notre Dame or Baylor or any school affiliated with the church? How would he have been treated? Would have been fired, right? That's my guess. Would have been fired. Wasn't fired, not fired at West Virginia. I'm not going to sit here and say that West Virginia is a backward state. You can make your own conclusions about West Virginia. I'm simply saying West Virginia athletics and West Virginia basketball may be the exception here and not the rule. Because the rule of the land right now that we live in is if you say something like this, especially when you intentionally say it into a microphone, you get fired. There are immediate professional problems and consequences with that when you use words like this. That didn't happen here. And I'm starting to believe the longer this goes on, Hutton, that's going to tell us more about West Virginia, their university, their athletic department, than it does Bob Huggins in this. Because
you made the Catholic reference as well.
And that's exactly why I bring up Notre Dame and Gonzaga and even non-Catholic Christian schools. If he's the head coach at Baylor, the largest Baptist university, or Liberty, and he makes a remark about Catholic bleeps at one of those schools, he's probably gone quickly. Now, Liberty has their own issues also that we're not going to get into here. Maybe that's a bad example, but I think most Christian institutions would have fired him.
Well, institutions make their own.
Most state universities, based on where you are in the country, would have fired him pretty much immediately.
Yes, but we also know, like, winning gets you certain places, right? And in this case, normally he's out the door. I'm with you. I'm surprised we haven't seen this yet. I still expect it to happen. And I mean, it's based on the audio. I mean, there are questions that I have about it that don't change, like, the overall outcome or the right or wrong message that West Virginia is sending by staying silent, other than the fact that they're looking into it, or the right or wrong message of reacting pro or con on how he should be handled in punishment. I think, Chad, you and I come down on that, where this can't be condoned. But the question I would have, was he drunk on Monday morning? I mean, I've got that. I mean, again, it doesn't change the fact that he said it. It doesn't excuse it in any way. Did he know he was live? Those are questions that are being asked. Does he think they're taping some interview? Again, questions I would want to know that don't change the fact of whether or not it was right or wrong. It was absolutely wrong. And the reaction to this compared to the reaction of what we've seen from Brenneman and quite frankly others is crazy to me. Especially considering that, I mean, the example is Brenneman, who 6 months after he's let go and he's headed to purgatory, media purgatory, to serve his sentence, he's giving a speech at the invite of Huggins. So there's no way that Huggins can say that he didn't know that this shouldn't be used. He wouldn't be able to say that anyway. But that's the example. If he's buddies with Brenneman and one of his good friends, this exact same thing happened to him. That's what's so surprising about the story to me.
Yeah, and David in our YouTube chat says those radio hosts did him no favors, guffawing and verbal backslapping. I agree.
That's fine.
I think
that's
those
true.
guys are going to get suspended.
That's true, but
by someone. Like their response was very odd, but they didn't say it. They're not the ones who said it. Their response was weird and laughing and saying, "Isn't Bob Huggins the best?" afterwards, which will probably lead to them getting a 2 or 3 day suspension from their job.
I have no idea.
But they didn't say what Bob Huggins said. It's interesting you bring up the thing about him being drunk. I kind of thought the same thing. Is he intoxicated? I mean, in some way when he's saying that and laughing the way that he was?
But I'm only asking that because how stupid can you be if you're Bob Huggins here? You know? How long he's been in this game doing what he's doing as a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, can you be more of an idiot in that setting discussing No, you can't. And that's why I'm asking the question. I'm not excusing what happened, but I do think that deserves an answer as to why he's doing it then and now and on the back end of his career, where you just don't do that now, period. Dave Portnoy even says that.
That's another great example.
Penn Entertainment is firing and canceling people. We've seen countless examples of this.
And I'm glad you brought that example up, Hutton, because, again, I mean, what Bob Huggins did was so far worse,
right,
I think, than either Brenneman, who didn't know he was on mic, and people are going to say, well, you know, you're really getting the real Tom Brenneman. Fine, whatever. But he's a professional. He wouldn't have said that if he knew he was on the pregame show at that time. So professionally, he's always done a good job. He was probably going to do a good job that day. he was caught on a hot mic talking to a friend, and he said something really stupid, and he's paid the price for it, and then some. Mincy at Barstool accidentally reads a rap lyric on air that uses a racial slur and says the racial slur on air. He's fired. I think Davey did the research for us 2 or 3 days later. Maybe this takes the same time frame, and Bob Huggins ends up getting fired 2 or 3 days after making a mistake.
Yeah, it was a couple
But again,
days
what
after.
he did is so far different than what Bob Huggins did. What Bob Huggins did is far worse. And I'm not saying he should absolutely be fired. I'm against that. If it's one mistake, he's owned up to the mistake, and you feel like if you're West Virginia, this was an outlier, this is not who he is, everyone has a bad morning or a bad day, I'm fine with them retaining him as the head coach. I've long been a Bob Huggins fan. I like his no-nonsense demeanor. I like the way his teams play. I don't like this. And if this is something that's a recurring thing, then he probably should be fired. But it's on West Virginia to decide that. But look at the separate cases and how they've been handled. So you've got Penn National, who said falsely that we're going to lose our license in states to bet because of what he said, which is dumb, and made Dave Portnoy fire Mincy at Barstool.
Although there was a government official in Massachusetts who had said that she wouldn't condone it and she didn't know why she was going to vote in approval of the state giving Penn Entertainment the right to have their gaming app in Massachusetts.
Which is stupid. Which is really stupid.
But they're pointing to that, and they're saying that would happen in every state.
And then it's what? It was a Fox Sports affiliate, I'm guessing, or whoever fired the TV company that fired Tom Brenneman on the regional network.
With the Reds, but then
Reds.
He's also not doing anything with Fox Sports in regards to the NFL and Fox. He had that gig too.
So look how those companies treated this. Both were legitimate mistakes. What Bob Huggins said, he didn't misspeak. He meant to say it. He laughed after he said it. He knew exactly what he was saying. So, look, he came out and released a statement saying, I'm not going to try to make any excuses for it. I think that's admirable, but I can't, I can't come on here and act like I'm not surprised that he still has a job.
Let's just say the statement is so much more eloquent than the audio.
Yeah.
You know?
It could have been his attorney writing.
Yeah, and they had hours to do it because this was the morning show from yesterday. And this came out when? Second hour of our show yesterday afternoon? Here's Bob Huggins live on the air on 700 WLW.
Have you poached any Savior guys to come to play for West Virginia?
Catholics don't do that.
No, we're above the fracas, aren't we? No problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell you what, any school that can throw rubber penises on the floor and then say they didn't do it, my God, they can get away with anything.
Rubber penis. Was this
I think that was at the Crosstown Shootout, wasn't it?
It was transgender night, wasn't it?
What?
Was that it?
It was a crosstown shootout. Yeah, no, what it was all those Catholic. I think.
All right.
They were envious they didn't have one.
Yeah, so there's Bob Huggins there, and then the statement, Chad, that he releases as the apologies. As I've shared with my players over my 40 years of coaching, there are consequences for our words and actions. I fully accept them in the coming way. I'm ashamed and embarrassed and heartbroken for those I have hurt. I must do better, and I will.
Well, he said it twice, too, as you hear there. He says it, and he comes back to it, and then he puts Catholic in front of it and says it again.
Plenty of headlines to hit throughout the show. When we come back, the Yips. Plenty of examples in Major League Baseball of that. Chad, I think of the Yips, I think of Chuck Knobloch. Immediately, right?
Every time. I also think of Rube in Major League 2, where he can't throw it back to the pitcher.
Yes.
He's the catcher who can throw people out at second, but can't throw the ball back to the pitcher, just routinely.
And you've seen this at every level. You're experiencing it now. Not with you on the mound, I'm saying, but just, nightly basis. Some of the best players just can't play up to their level of play because they've got the Yips. The recent example is Noah Syndergaard. And Michael McHenry has his own personal example of someone that he's friends with and played with that is now known as the guy to go to for the cure if you have the Yips. That's next on Hot Mic. recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker,
right
wasn't
next
it?
to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. You know, he's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
You go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, you know, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, you know, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you know, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden. Madden, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and you know. And I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, "Cuz, like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already. You know?
Yeah.
Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVPs. Like, now because of Madden, now you're cool." I was like, "Oh, okay."
You had done a few things.
Yeah. You know, now I'm good. Okay, all right, well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working the morning news, shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about season. How you feeling? You know, you ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro. What do you think? I'm living under a rock. And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
Always great to have Michael McHenry on the show talking Major League Baseball. Welcome back. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Michael, great to have you back, man. And, man, it's a good year to be a Pirates fan or an Orioles fan. Teams that normally are throwing in the towel right now are actually have fan bases who believe. I'm one of them with Baltimore.
And hey, don't forget about Tampa Bay. Those guys are like juggernauts right now, playing such good baseball. It's almost like they found a secret potion of sorts. But yeah, it's a fun time right now to be a baseball fan. You have small market teams right out on top and doing some special things. So at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. You got to get out there and you got to let the kids play, see what happens, because you never know what the game may bestow on any given year. I mean, you see early on the Cardinals, man, they've just fallen off a cliff, and that's just not what we're used to seeing. And I think it's really neat and good for baseball.
Are you ready to call them dead now, Michael? You've been consistent that they're going to figure it out and turn this thing around, but here they are, one of the worst teams in baseball to start the season. They're sending star guys down. They're taking guys out of catcher and throwing them in the outfield. Can we call it, give it the 3 count, are the Cardinals dead here in early May?
They're turning blue. I'll tell you that much. I'm not going to call them dead, but you do have to look at it. And times like this, you look at it and say, what's going on? Are they going to have a play for a move? I mean, I think something was really involved with that Matt Holliday signing, bringing him in as a guy that could really pour into those guys. Obviously has a knack for development with his 2 sons, one being the first pick overall, the next one probably going to be the same. And then he literally quits after a couple weeks. I mean, doesn't even get to spring training. You had to think there had to be some type of morale issue or some type of thing going on behind the scenes or in the front office. And I'll tell you right now, I think you're going to see Wainwright, and I think you're going to see Molina as coaches in the near future for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Michael McHenry with us on Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow, MLB analyst as well for the Pittsburgh Pirates and their broadcast network. So Noah Syndergaard, in a last-ditch effort to get over whatever funk he's in, the yips, is turning to hypnosis. 1-3, a 3.94 ERA. What do you make of this, and does it tie into things that guys have tried in the clubhouse before to get over whatever mental state they're in?
Honestly, Hud, it's whatever it takes. I was very fortunate to be a part of Tyler Matzek's journey. I got him connected with Jason Kuhn and Navy SEAL. We went to extreme measures, but Tyler made that choice. I called him and said, hey, I have a guy that may help, and I have some ideas that could possibly help you kind of wrap this in a bow and see what happens. He was all in. And you have to be all in. Yeah, if you think the Kool-Aid with the hypnosis, which is just your perception of maybe it's shifting your mind to the right place, it's honestly whatever it takes. I mean, I've seen guys carry boulders underneath the ocean with sharks all around them to get a better mindset, to become mentally tough. But if it's me and I'm trying to get back on the field, I'm going to the toughest dudes on the planet. And those are the guys in the military, the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs, because they have to get through buds. And that's not just a physically grueling thing. It's also a mentally grueling thing. So, you got to kind of keep your mind open and figure out, why did you start playing this game? Because usually it has to do with something that is outside the game, something that maybe you couldn't control, but you didn't know how to deal with it.
So you mentioned Jason Kuhn. How did he become the expert in getting over the yips?
I mean, think about this, guys. You have a guy at Middle Tennessee. He maybe still has the all-time wild pitch record in the NCAA. I told him I'd get him a trophy if that's so, because that's really, really impressive. And this guy left on 9/11. After 9/11 happened, he just bounced. His dreams of baseball shattered. He was a closer at Middle Tennessee State. So he went over and became a Navy SEAL, and he was part of one of the elite units, worked for the CIA, was all over the place. And he decided, I have to beat this and prove it. So he started throwing when he got back. He fell in love with the game. I've caught his bullpens. He actually threw when Tyler was in town. Now he has yipsfree.com. I advise for him and consult. This guy's awesome. He has a great network of people around him, and he's really changing the entire mental toughness realm. They call it mental skills. I don't like that term, so I'm just going to say mental performance.
Such a fun time to follow Major League Baseball. So many crazy things happening, including Amir Garrett of the Kansas City Royals puking harder than I've ever seen anyone puke in a live sporting event. on the mound and then leaving after that. What's the sickest you've ever felt playing the game of baseball, Michael? Did you ever feel like this might happen to you on the diamond?
On the diamond, I'm swallowing it, guys. I'm taking it back in.
Wow.
You know, I'm puckering up the cheeks if I'm behind the plate, unless I didn't like the umpire. But guys, I'm telling you right now, I can't believe that happened. And you kind of wonder what, you know, if he was surprised, caught off guard. But a lot of these guys in the bullpen, I call them the Red Bull Warriors. They'll pound a Red Bull, and the best ones smash it against their head or smash it or throw it down, kind of like they're getting intense. And maybe that's what he did. It just didn't settle well. But yeah, that was a strange thing. I've seen it in debuts, but I don't know if I've ever seen it with a veteran.
The old Technicolor yawn, Chad.
It was hilarious too, because the announcers said, "Oh, we may have an oblique issue here," because he started to, you know, keel over the way you
Maybe
would if
after
you're
the
throwing
fact.
up. And then they showed the replay, said definitely not an oblique issue that we're witnessing. It was crazy. The other crazy moment was Tigers Guardians, and the Tigers player, and I want to say the name right, Akil Baddoo, the left fielder for the Tigers, stealing second. Ball goes off of his junk on the throw from the catcher into the second baseman's mitt, Andres Jimenez, and they tag him out. I have watched this replay, Michael, over and over and over again, and it is some Matrix-level stuff that the second baseman was able to catch it so quickly off of the guy's junk. Have you ever witnessed anything like that before?
No, I mean, that should be a circus show, right? And I want to know how StatCast rates it. Is it a barrel, or is it an automatic ball next time through so that the next count starts 3 balls? I mean, they should at least do something for these guys, because, I mean, that was awful. I mean, awful. And the fact it bounced off his junk into the glove, and then he pretty much got a knee in the face, and he got tagged out. I mean, that's just a tough day. I mean, that's just bad karma. May need to sacrifice a chicken or something.
So one more, I love the Major League reference. So one more oddity I want to get into is Ronald Acuna's arm that we witnessed on Sunday against the Orioles with the punch out from deep right field.
Awesome.
He's got 5 outfield assists already, and it's early May, which is pretty remarkable. But that's a part of the game, Michael. We don't often talk about outfielders' ability to actually throw people out from the outfield. Acuna has that.
I'm very fortunate to be in Pittsburgh, and Roberto Clemente, I hear stories. And there's only one better throw I've ever seen. Well, I'll say maybe two better throws, one being a former Blue Raider, and Brett Carroll. He had one of the best arms I've ever seen. But Mookie Betts made a play here at PNC, and I'm calling the game. He spins and turns and throws it on a dime from, I don't know, probably 310 feet. It's a long hop. And guys like him and Acuna, you have to watch these guys, because we're seeing just some special type talent. I mean, there's a chance this kid in Atlanta is going to have a 40-40 season, win a Gold Glove, a Silver Slugger, and possibly even an MVP if he keeps this up. And I think it's all based on last year. I think he rushed back a little bit, and he really wanted to prove something of how talented he is. This guy is a special breed of baseball player.
Michael McHenry with us, talking Major League Baseball headlines and more. So, Fort, we've got Aaron Judge coming back off the IL. He's asked about the injury, which he was sliding headfirst into second in a game where the Yankees were up 5, and he was asked, like, was that really necessary? And he goes, well, this is a team that put up 11 runs on us in the past in the same inning. So, yeah, I'm going to do it again. I just won't slide headfirst. And there was also a game where he was hurt, apparently, where he was asked to take the day off for rest. And he goes, I don't want days off throughout the season. How often are players, number one, asked to do that, and can they say no? And number two, how many players want the daily regiment instead of getting the days off for rest and everything else that goes into it as they're trying to manage things for the duration of the season from upstairs?
Well, first off, you got to play the game you have played your entire life with reckless abandonment. Because as soon as you get tentative, that's when you get hurt. I watch O'Neal Cruz, our unicorn. I consider Aaron Judge a unicorn in hole too. So these guys just got to go out and play. They cannot adjust because, they don't want them to get hurt. Mm-hmm. Guys that play reckless, they usually are just fine. I mean, you guys cover the NFL. How well has the targeting stuff worked, right? With injuries in every sport from my understanding, just keep going up. So these rules put a lot of gray area. These thoughts that coaches bring put a lot of gray area. And a guy like Judge, if he wants to play, he's playing. If he wants a day off, he gets a day off. But the fact that you have a guy that wants to be in the lineup every single day, wants to lead by example and play with injuries because he's under contract, and that's to your last point, guys that aren't under contract, you play through whatever you can. You can't say I want a day off. You can't say all these different elements that guys that like Bryce Harper and Judge can do, or Bryce Harper comes back like Wolverine into the lineup, and most guys can't do that because they have to think about their career. This guy's signed. That's the benefit of signing great players, not just on the field, but the guys that literally want to win, like Judge and Harper and these guys, because they'll get back out there. We just signed Brian Reynolds, and this guy will bleed for the city of Pittsburgh, bleed for his family now that he has a guaranteed contract, because it's not the same if you don't, because they'll get rid of you immediately. It doesn't matter your entire track record. You get hurt and they think they can replace you for a little bit cheaper, he gone.
Well, and that's the mindset that takes a player from an era or generation player to a legacy player known for generations, right? Like the guy got paid, and specifically Judge, and he's saying that this year after all of the contract talk we went through a year ago.
You're exactly right. And I hope that story just keeps getting out of how he wants to be on the field no matter what. Maybe rushes rehab. I didn't look if he took a rehab assignment, but Bryce Harper didn't. He probably didn't. These guys just showing up, suiting up, and walking towards that batter's box, the morale shifts. Not just in that dugout, but on the other side too. It's going to shift for those guys because they're like, man, we got the juggernaut back today. The Judge is in the lineup. That's a completely different lineup. In New York, we have him. Exactly. And then you have all the fans that are going to all rise and probably give him a standing ovation as soon as he walks onto that field. Doesn't matter what stadium he's playing at, because he's a face of MLB. He's one of the guys that's right out in front of it. He's loved in Pittsburgh. He's loved everywhere he goes.
Yankees are in last place in the AL East at 19-17 in last place. That's 8 games better than the St. Louis Cardinals if they were in the same division, by the way. And the Cardinals are 4 games better than the worst team in baseball, the Oakland Athletics, 8-28, the only team in major leagues to not win double-digit games yet. And that is a crumbling house around them, literally and figuratively, with the team on the move, a decrepit stadium, terrible facilities, a bad and cheap baseball team. Fort, you've been on some bad teams in your days with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and you know early on it's going to be a long season. Does that rally a team, or does that separate a team when you're going through something like this, like the A's are going through this season?
I can't even speak to what they're going through. It's all bad. I mean, you're in the big leagues playing at a AA stadium that's falling apart. I mean, I saw a tweet the other day that a fan was holding a part of the seat. And I think when you think about your character and you think about how you want to leave your legacy, if I was the owner, I just couldn't handle that. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I wouldn't be able to do anything other than think about how can I take care of my players, my fans. Because if you go look at Texas's new stadium, they have a 2-tier weight room. They have a state-of-the-art training room. So you're competing in the same division with some of the best facilities in all of baseball. How would you expect your guys to go out there and play really well, right, when you can't even put together a good environment for them? I mean, there's mold, there's all these things going on, and that's just not okay. And I feel so bad for that city, so bad for those fans, because 10,000 fans there feels like 30,000 fans in other places. They're diehard, they love it. And I think people need to remember, like, you're taking something away that's been there a very long time, that has a rich history and an unbelievable tradition. Yeah, it's fallen apart, but I believe they allowed it to.
Cutter Crawford and Matt Strong, Red Sox, Phillies, they have the standoff, the anthem standoff, where after the anthem, they refuse to, take a step back into the dugout until the other one does. The game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? Ejected for this. What do you make of the story? It made me laugh too. But I'm sure you've seen this throughout the career of AAA and even in the minors, college, what have you. What was your reaction when you saw it, and the result, which was, hey, you guys head back to the clubhouse?
I love it. I think the more fun we're having in this game, it's going to bring what they've ultimately wanted, right? They've wanted the younger folks to fall in love with this. I'm sure our normal market is somewhere from 45 and above and mostly male. So this brings the TikToks, it brings the Instagrams, it brings the people that aren't just on Twitter and LinkedIn to baseball. And that's what they need to do, because the front office is full of guys on LinkedIn. We need to allow these guys to go out and just show their personality. I mean, just let it shine. Like all the home run celebrations, everything that's going on, it's awesome for the game. I absolutely love it. I mean, you can go to a Little League game right now and you're going to see a kid score and then dance to the dugout. I saw a rave happen in the dugout up in Pittsburgh here recently at an event I was at. In the dugout, 10-year-olds. I mean, this is a blast. Like, it should just be, all right, you guys are good. Can you guys stay there all game? Don't get hurt.
The Fort, Michael McHenry with us on Hot Mic. So we brought the story up last week. I'm going to get your take. You've got the Los Angeles Angels, who they are pre-screening questions for their assistant coaches. And in this case, the example was the hitting coach, because they wanted to, reporters digging in on why Rendon is playing well, but doesn't have the same power that he once did. And they're digging in on why, so they want to talk to the hitting coach. And they are pre-screening any negative questions, and the negative questions go to Phil Nevin, the manager. Is this the manager's call, or is this a player issue?
It's not a player issue. The player has a choice to, answer those questions whenever he wants. I think every coach, you signed up to be at an elite level of your profession, so you have to answer the call. And I think it's cool that Phil Nevin's taken on those negative questions. They're not just washing them away, but don't filter them. Like, they have to go through an entire background check and all these things just to get in the stadium. So you know who they are, you know what they're made of, you've seen what they've written. There was some credited business or media outlet. So let it be. They just need to let this game play itself out. The tough questions are some of the things that fans really want to know. So I hope they take a different path with this. You should allow it to happen. I think they should take fans' questions, do some town halls. Teams that aren't playing the way that they should. I mean, you have the two best players possibly in the last decade outside of Judge on the same team. Why aren't they winning? What's going on? And that's the questions you got to answer with depth.
Is this Nevin micromanaging this? Is that it? Or is it him just keeping and protecting his coaches from having to answer? I mean, this should be a tough question for a hitting coach to answer about Rendon's
I can't tell if it's stand up or soft of him. Stand up to say, I'll take all the negative stuff and let you guys do it, or soft to say you guys can't handle any possible negativity.
And they're not saying you can't ask the tough questions, but the tough questions go to the manager.
Him.
Yeah, he could have gone straight to the PR guy, but they have a social media department, they have a PR guy, they have HR, they have multiple people that are underneath these people. So when you look at it as a whole, that's coming from the top. And I think Phil Nevin's trying to say, well, I'll take these questions on, because as a manager, you speak to these reporters every day. You talk to them behind the scenes. They're in your office. You have a pregame sit down in the dugout or a conference room. You do postgame. It's every day. So these guys have a really good rapport. So my guess is you have the front office or the PR guy who's been told, hey, there's too many negative questions here. These guys don't want to answer them or whatever. And Nevin's trying to take it all on himself, which isn't what a manager should be doing. He needs to answer the questions that are presented to him, just like Terry Francona does, and a lot of the guys do across the league, which gives them a different personality. I mean, it's a shame. It really is. I mean, he should take some notes from Ted Lasso.
Chad, your thoughts on Ted Lasso?
Like, he answers everything.
I'm leaning towards it's a stand-up move on Phil Nevin. I'm leaning towards this latest season of Ted Lasso being terrible. Also, I'll get into my review later, but not happy with Ted Lasso this season. Like the first two seasons, I think it's fallen off a cliff in the final season.
How worried are you, Chad, about Max Fried and the forearm issue?
Very worried. I think any time you get into this shoulder, forearm, any level of arm tightness, that's a recurring thing. I get very nervous for star pitchers, and that's where Max Fried is now entering now that he's on the DL with forearm tightness.
Yeah, and whatever you read, whatever you hear, it's never what's really happening. They keep it so locked keyed. I'll never forget when I hurt my knee. They said, "Oh, he's cleared. He's okay. It's just sprained." Guys, my knee was literally locked. I couldn't move it. I couldn't even unlock my knee, but they just were holding the move. They didn't want to say who was called up. We already called up the other catcher. So it was a little bit of a mess. And I did a big dog and pony show to say that so we could kind of hide the move. But yeah, I'll tell you right now, these guys take care of themselves so well. We just had Vince Velasquez go down. It was very minor, and it looked really, really bad. And very similar to Max Fried, he knows his body. He may have pulled himself out there in first place, knowing, hey, I need to pull back. Something didn't feel right there, and it could have just been a genuine strain. And that's what I hope, because that guy's pitching off the charts right now.
Michael McHenry always brings it. Love having you on, man. Thank you for the time, and we'll catch you up in a couple of weeks.
Love this, guys. Appreciate you. And don't take it too hard on Ted Lasso. All right, he's sensitive.
I need Ted Lasso to be better. I need the writers and everyone to be better on that show. But hopefully it ends well. Just like this
Absolutely.
interview, Michael. You always end well. We appreciate that
very
about
consistent.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
The Fort McHenry on socials, where you can find Michael McHenry. So when we come back, sticking to baseball, we've got a high school that had to, due to a pitch count violation, forfeit, and now they're missing the tournament. But I think for good reason, we can point to. Hey, and for more baseball discussion, you can go to OutKick.com. The recent episode of the Kurt Schilling Baseball Show, it's available because it's Tuesday. It's available every Tuesday and Friday at OutKick.com. Stay tuned. More coming. Net Hot Mike.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Glad you're with us. 6th and Peabody, our location for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Follow us on social. Hit us up on YouTube as well. Chad is chatting away right now.
Feverishly typing away in the chat right now.
Looks like my grandmother whenever she worked as a secretary for a local judge over here.
I'm a hunt and pet guy. I never took typing in high school.
I took typing.
But I can type fast. I just don't have the proper finger etiquette in terms of where to put the fingers for the typing.
I was faster hunting and pecking, as you put it, than the method. So I would do that and look around and make sure no one was seeing me do that.
My mom.
And then I get, so many words per minute to get your grade.
My mom, who worked as an outpatient scheduler for a hospital for years, excellent at typing, and is disgusted whenever she sees me get a laptop out and start typing. And every time it's like it's new to her. How do you not know how to type? And I want to respond and say, because you didn't teach me. That's how.
I just find my method better.
Yeah, I like it better also.
I can start.
Because I don't know the other way. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, I can start with the F and the J here, but I don't really care to.
I'm never searching too long for a letter the way I do it, right? I'm going pretty quick when I'm typing something up.
Isn't it crazy how your mind memory, though? Like if I want to send a text right now, as long as I know I'm on the text with you, I can pull this up and send you something like right now I'm texting you and not even look at the
phone and know what you're doing.
Yeah, and there's really no, I mean, it's just memory of where it is, but there's no button. You just, it's not like you feel where you are on the keypad.
Yeah, you just know about where everything is. The mind is a wonderful thing, Hutton.
Chad, Innsworth High School, they knew where they were on the pitch count for their star pitcher. Connor Cobb, I believe is his name. Star pitcher for Innsworth, who is going to Vanderbilt to pitch for, a great university and a great baseball program.
Yes.
He threw 121 pitches in a game that they won 5-0. And there is a 20 pitch count rule for the TSSAA.
Can't go over 120 pitches.
120, and then you've got to come out. Okay. There are pitch count rules in every level of the game that we see in regards to high school and previous, right? Like you I'm sure deal with certain things. Not with your pitch count rule, Chad, but I'm saying just in general.
It's like an inning count typically in Little League that you have to go through.
Yes. There's no doubt that they knew the pitch count here. He's got a great game going, no-hit effort, which they end up winning the game on the extra pitch, the one pitch over. They end up having to forfeit that game, and their season's over after winning 5-0. I don't blame the coach for going one pitch over, knowing the rule. They self-reported this, by the way. But this is a great example of how in society we make exceptions for some things, and we just, for whatever reason, when something is blatantly obvious, can't make exceptions for other things. There was no harm, no foul here. The game's 5-0. The kid's throwing a no-hitter. You're not going to hit him. If you get a hit, the next guy's getting out. You're not going to pull a comeback against that guy. Point being, the same state where Penny Hardaway was not employed by the high school, not allowed to be a head coach, technically was the head coach of a state championship winning basketball team, where it was hush-hush. But everyone knew Penny was the head coach when the guy listed as the head coach sat and said nothing on the bench. But that's not an issue. And I'm using this as just in a broad scale term, Chad, saying, what are we doing here? Why do you have to end a season based on a no-hitter for one pitch over? Not 30 pitches over. I'm not making an exception for that. I'm making an exception for, he didn't get that final out on pitch 120. It was just a little bit outside or whatever. And on the very next pitch, the game ends. Come on.
It's very NCAA, letter of the law, button everything up, follow all the rules, even if it doesn't make sense. Dale Brown at LSU back in the day, pays for a kid's flight home to St. Louis because one of his parents is being buried. He doesn't have the money to get home, and it's an NCAA violation, and LSU gets a bunch of penalties against them. Come on. That's one that you probably look past and say, we'll make an exception here. And then later on, they would eventually change the rules, and you would do that. Now, with this one, I can understand the coach thinking, I'll turn myself in, but surely the TSSAA in this instance, the Tennessee Regulatory Board for High School Sports will say, no problem, not a big deal, go on and play Game 3. It was best of 2 or 3 series. They lost Game 1, they won Game 2 with that performance in the pitcher and decided to go one over. Now, on the other side, I will say, you are one pitch away. Just take the kid out. You've reached the limit. If you know it, why risk it? So I do blame the coach a little bit here. If he in fact knew, and it wasn't just some clerical error on the pitches, that he left him out there for one pitch to complete the perfect game when you could have had a 2-pitcher perfect game and brought someone else in.
But in this case,
you took the risk at that point also.
But in this case, in this particular rule in the state, and I'm certain it was similar elsewhere, and it may be exact elsewhere. Prior to 2017, if you were at the pitch count limit, you were allowed to finish the batter. And and since 2017, they just changed the rule, especially in the postseason, because you're playing in close proximity to your last start.
Well, that was 6 years ago.
but 6 years ago, we're overlooking Penny Hardaway on the baseline or on the sideline coaching for Memphis East.
Well, that is
with Alex Lomax living with him.
That's a technicality that they were willing to overlook, but they also, I don't know what the rule is on, you say someone's the head coach, do they have to stand a certain percentage of the time? Do they have to speak a certain percentage of the time? That was Memphis East doing something that was trying to get around the technicality by doing something to fool them. This was a guy who could have very easily just taken the kid out.
And the guy
with one pitch left.
The guy listed as head coach didn't speak to the media after the win.
Yeah.
In that case.
If I were a parent on that team and my son's season ended because of that, I'd be pissed at the coach.
Maybe
I would be up there raising my hand saying, take him out. That's 120, coach. We don't want to have to forfeit this 5-0 win that we're going to have so we can play tomorrow. I'd hate if my son's career ended because the coach decided that one kid was going to pitch one more ball, one over. Now, should TSSAA look past it? Probably.
Well, they would.
But it's also on the coach.
They would have. They self-reported it. They self-reported this.
Yeah, it's also on the coach.
Well, again, it's make up the rules as you go, which I'm totally against for one and not the other. Headlines next, including Matt Araize is back in the headline.
My primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number 1 pet peeve, telemarketers. Number 2 pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number 3 pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number 4 pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you gotta keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk, period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
The reason that I worry if I'm a Yankee fan is this number, 109. 109. What is that? That is the difference in run differential between the Yankees and the Rays. The Rays are plus 113, which is unearthly. The Yankees are plus 4. The Yankees have scored 126 runs, which is staggering. It's one of the worst numbers in baseball. It certainly is the worst number in the AL East. They've scored 126, given up 122. The Rays have scored 207 and given up 94. I think they are the only, and I'm almost 99% sure, they are the only team in the big leagues that has given up fewer than 100 runs. And I don't want to be wrong on that, so let me look.
Well,
yes,
the Yankees also aren't hitting home runs, and
they're
Brian Cashman wants that.
Well, but Stanton and Judge are out of lineup, so
Yeah.
that's one of those things that's not a stat that you look at and go, "Gosh, I wonder why that is." I mean,
Just like that, The second hour is here for Hot Mike. Huddy Withrow with you across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us as we broadcast live from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. John McLean of GallerySports.com covered the NFL for nearly 5 decades. A lot to hit with him today. We'll dive into that in 20 minutes. Plus, later, John DeFilippo, longtime offensive coordinator in the NFL, now the head coach for the New Orleans Breakers in the USFL. Great conversation there, where at one point recently he didn't think, 2 different doctors told him he may not walk unassisted again. And he was able to sprint onto the field, run onto the field for their season opener in New Orleans, and they're off to a great start there. We'll dive into that question and topic and discussion and much more, including all the quarterbacks he's coached. You want the list?
Yes.
Just real.
Let's go through some of them.
Not the entire list. It's just 5 quick ones. Nick Foles, Gardner Minshew, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, Justin Fields. We can also throw in
not bad.
Wentz into that. As far as just different personalities and situations, I'm fascinated by how he approached those guys.
It's a good list.
Chad, Matt Ariza, the punt god. We spent a lot of time, even prior to the allegations, the rape allegations that came out that subsequently led to his release of the Buffalo Bills. Spent a ton of time on just him being a generational punter for the National Football League. And quickly thereafter, he was released by Buffalo due to the rape charges and allegations that he had unconsensual sex with someone that he thought was of age but was underage. And the Bills let him go. And since then, he's been saying he's completely innocent. He didn't say that he didn't have sex with the girl or woman. He said that it was consensual, and she said that she was 18. Well, per Dan Wetzel, newly released information show he wasn't present at the time of the video that is now being used to show he wasn't there, and they may not even have the ability to prove a case of rape based on the video evidence that's being leaked with all of this. This is something that is not a recurring issue enough that's discussed as a top headline. But if, in fact, he's totally innocent of this, consider the different stories you can point to. A.J. Johnson comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
In Knoxville, where there are allegations that surface in November of 2014 that he is not acquitted of until July of 2018. And whenever this came out, this is right on the eve of him going to the Combine. He was not allowed, linebacker in the SEC, not allowed to go to the Combine. And now he's bounced around the league at best as a practice squad / special teams player when he was much better than that at the time. And in Matt Araiza's case, you have people involved and witnesses that are saying that he wasn't present. But on top of that, there may not be able to prove a criminal case on behalf of the plaintiff in this because multiple men were involved. And in Ariza's case, he's saying he went outside to pee. She approached him, and they had consensual sex.
Yeah, there's a lot of witnesses in this story too that were approached by the same young woman that are
at
confirming that she was walking up to people, essentially verbally offering herself up to the party. It's a terrible situation, and it's a great lesson in there is a court of opinion, and there is a court of law in this country, and we must wait until the court of law rules, and all sides of the story are released. Now, is he guilty of statutory rape?
He still can face civil charges of that.
Yes, I would say so, because a defense is not, she said she was 18. Even though I believe him, based on witnesses and everyone else in this case that said the same thing, that she was walking around telling everyone that. Now, does that put the onus on someone to look at their ID, before having consensual sex with them? I don't know how that looks in court, but is he completely innocent of everything in this? Maybe not. Maybe he is going to face something civilly, but the big headline and takeaway was Matt Araiza was involved in gang rape when this story came out, and that was the allegation. And he's not guilty of that. He has been cleared of that. And that's an important thing to note. And here's the crazy thing about it, Hutton. This could cost him his career in the NFL.
Could, but also
I don't know that he's going to get another chance.
It could clear his name. This video where it's very unclear on if she's approving of whatever's going on or not. Let's put it that way. And if you can't prove that in the video that's taking place where Araiza is not present, how can you believe her if she says that, oh, I told him I was 17? If everyone else is saying she's going around saying that she was of age.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't know the law, but I don't think that matters.
Well, it's
like she could say she was 25.
It's a preponderance of the evidence, so it's more likely than not if it's a civil trial.
Well, they're not going to press charges on the allegation of gang rape because she's so off.
And the allegation
on everything that happened.
of the attorney representing her is saying Ariza's attorney is leaking this so that they'll drop the civil suit. And he said we're far from dropping those charges against Araiza. But 2 days after these allegations came out, Buffalo, kicked him to the curb.
They hung with him for a couple days, and then the noise got too loud to hold on to.
But also, this did not happen as he went straight into the league. This is something that had happened
at San Diego State.
But like a year and a half prior, where the San Diego district attorney didn't bring forth charges for a while, criminally. So it is a mess, and it just goes to show, false accusers should face more than just a fine or wasting people's time in this. They should face charges.
Yeah, I don't.
If you could prove that what the allegations are absolutely false.
Well, what's happened now to Matt Ariza and what happened to A.J. Johnson, the other example, who was with the, eventually got to the NFL, but career was definitely in jeopardy, and years of his life were taken away because he faced an allegation that was completely false.
Well, let me throw one more in.
Something should happen.
Trevor Bauer. He has maintained his innocence, and he's been blackballed by Major League Baseball. And nothing's come of that case.
The fear is, in doing so, you don't want to discourage women from coming forward if they are legitimate victims of something. And that if there is suddenly now you're on trial too, and if you aren't proven right, you're going to go to jail for being a false accuser.
Right.
That would scare. Many women are scared to come forward either way. That would scare away a lot more from doing that.
I'm saying you've got to be able to prove it.
That's the flip side of the argument. But if you can find malice, it's sort of like libel or slander, right? It's a law like that. If you can find this person knowingly did this for whatever reason, out of malice, they were angry with the person, or we have texts that show this was actually the relationship. Yeah, I think it should be worse than a fine. I think there should be jail time for someone that basically ruined someone else's life or a part of it with a false accusation. That should happen. Now, it's got to be something that's very difficult to prove, though, also, right? You got to make it really, really hard to prove. The standard of proof of what you're looking for with that would have to be very, very difficult, I think, for a false accuser to face jail time. But turns out it's a sad story for Matt Ariza because he was charged and he was convicted in the court of public opinion, and it looks like he's not guilty of the crime he was accused of, even if he is guilty of something he may be civilly liable for.
Well, he has filed a claim against San Diego State University for damage to his reputation. That was a document that was acquired by ESPN. But also remember, this came to light as he was drafted and went into the league. So the news came out, and the accusation, the response at the time was, well, here's the text between the two parties. Here's the correspondence. There are at least two witnesses that claim that and will testify that she was going around the party saying she was 18 years old. But all of that aside, the news then comes out and hits the media circus as he's about to join the Buffalo Bills with all of the Super Bowl aspirations. And, 2 days after this comes out, he's off the team. And there needs to be more done to dig up exactly the timing of that news and whether or not, Chad, you're right, there was malice behind what was taking place here.
Yeah, I mean, that's – and I say malice, but if you can prove that someone knowingly falsely accused someone and wasn't just mistaken for whatever reason, there's got to be some sort of punishment, I would think. This is a great example of that. Now, this one's a little bit trickier because of the statutory rape part of it that Matt Araize is not even denying. There was no rape, but by technicality, because she wasn't 18, he could be guilty of a crime by having consensual sex with her, even if she lied to him about her age. That's very unfortunate for Matt Araize, and he may be found civilly liable for something because of this civil case, but he should get an opportunity to play in the NFL. And he may never get that now. People may just say, well, we've got a punter, we're good, and not take a chance on him. And that sucks.
Yes.
That his dream of playing in the NFL is over because he was accused of gang rape and he wasn't even there. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, but also doesn't deny having sex with her. Right? I mean, that's the other part. He was just like it was consensual.
Yeah, I think they're two separate incidents. There was him having sex with her outside the house earlier in the night, and then him being gone for an hour and a half when the big crime happened that she claims happened.
Which there are point of view videos of where she's not verbally, the reports are she's not telling them anything that you would expect them to say.
The video
like
evidence
stop.
and the eyewitness accounts are so bad for her that no authorities have pressed charges.
Right.
They have declined to press any charges. So the only hope she now has is in civil court.
Chad, the NFL draft could be record-setting coming up. Think about the players involved versus was it a starting group draft? Yes. Was it a superstar draft? No, in 2023. Now think about all of the talent involved in next year's draft. And ESPN is already loading up. They are loading up the boat for this. With the quarterbacks, where the analysts this year were already saying next year's group would go ahead of this year's group, hands down. But then you have the defensive backs, Kool-Aid, McHenry, and others that are a part of this. It's one of those legacy drafts for teams. And thinking about this story and as we look ahead, keep an eye on the tanking. That's all I'm thinking. As I'm seeing all these players and the two quarterbacks. You don't want to take a quarterback early. You want to, suck for luck or tank for Tua. I'm keeping an eye out for everything with Caleb Williams because Arizona is loading up on draft picks. And they were going to do everything in their power to make sure they can get out from underneath the Kyler Murray contract if they can. And if they can't, they're going to have the firepower with all of these picks to move up and go after Williams. But you still have May and others involved here too.
Well, that's how good this draft is, that Caleb Williams could be a generational type talent and no-brainer number one pick. And I have a brain to say he may not be the number one overall pick. I think Drake may end up being the number one overall pick. He's that good. Next year's draft in Detroit, when you look at those guys. So those two players, Daniel Jeremiah, other NFL draft analysts say those guys would have gone ahead of any quarterback in this year's draft, including Bryce Young, those two alone. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a big-ticket item. Whoever gets him, because of his lineage, because of who his daddy is, and because how he makes everyone feel like he's their daddy in college football right now, he's going to be a top-of-the-line player and get a lot of buzz going into next year. You mentioned Kool-Aid McHenry at Alabama, just with the first name. He's going to be a much-talked-about player.
How about Georgia?
The draft moving, I'm sure they've got four or five guys. Brock Bowers is possibly a generational tight end talent. Also, draft going to Detroit. Does that add to the ratings? Probably not, but pretty cool for the city of Detroit to get what could be a very, very highly watched NFL draft next year. And this is one truth about football. It's never too early to talk draft. I don't know about you, Hutton, but the moment this draft ended, I tell myself, well, now we can talk about where all these players landed. But what I did was I took a sneak peek at the 2024 mock drafts and looked at the top 10 or 15. And I immediately look at that because I want to remember how wrong everyone is. Because we know that there's going to be a couple things that are right, but there's going to be many, many things that are wrong about what we think now versus what's going to happen.
Someone gets hurt.
But just looking at the top of what that draft should be with the quarterbacks and with Brock Bowers and with Marvin Harrison Jr., it's going to be a hell of a draft next year. We will hit some of the draft headlines and discuss the NFL topics with John McLean, including NFL schedule release. Up until yesterday, and this is very unusual for the National Football League. Up until yesterday, they had not told their fans, hey, here's the announcement for the announcement about our schedule in the fall. The unusual part of it is Peter King was saying they may not have it ready by Thursday. They've said, okay, we will have it ready. But they have so many other outlets now demanding top games. There are plenty of them, including a rematch that we just watched in the Super Bowl. But you have all these international games. You have Amazon, who's paying $1 billion for one game a week over the schedule. They're also going to add a Black Friday game. They want that to be a big matchup. And then you still have Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, and the premium games on their main partners. I say their main partners. They're true partners that we've known for decades. Yep. John weighs in on all of that and more straight ahead on Hot Mic. Recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker, wasn't it?
Right next to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He's a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. You know, he's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
you go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, you know, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, you know, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you know, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden. Madden, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and you know. And I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, "Cuz, like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already. You know? Yeah. Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVPs. Like now because of Madden, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah. You know, now I'm good. Okay, all right. Well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working in the morning news. Shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about the season. How you feeling? You know, you ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro, what do you think? I'm living under a rock? And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
John McLean joins us, talking NFL headlines and much more. 6th and Peabody, our location, with EI Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic rolls on across the OutKick network. Find John with GallerySports.com and find him on social at McLean_on_NFL. John, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Fantastic. The NFL knows how to make an event out of anything. They've done it brilliantly with the NFL schedule release. But what makes it so difficult, John, is all of the networks paying billions want about how many teams as much as possible. How many of these organizations truly drive the boat for what makes the schedule so difficult to put together?
They wanted to make the most money. They'd have the Cowboys on every primetime game because the Cowboys draw the biggest audiences. And then you look at New York, the New York teams, Philadelphia now, San Francisco, the big markets, Packers, of course, Steelers, because they have great tradition. If the Bears ever got decent, they'd want them as well. But they can't do that because they want to spread it around. They've changed some rules this year, which makes it a little more interesting. And it's amazing to me. We know who the teams are going to play. We know where they're going to play. And now we're on the edge of our chairs trying to learn when and what time. And it's amazing. But when they did it right before the draft, it just came and it went because everybody was talking about the draft and all the prospects. And then all of a sudden, I'd love to know who came up and say, hey, Commissioner, what do you think about we delay it a couple of weeks and just own that time period as well? And then Roger Goodell eventually had to run it up the flagpole. Everybody liked the idea. And it is amazing the attention the schedule's getting that we already know who's going to play whom.
How many games do you think they want to get to internationally? Because they're at 5 this year.
I think they want to keep going. I remember when Oliver Luck, Andrew Luck's dad, was the general manager of the Frankfurt Galaxy and the NFL Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And they were by far had the biggest attendance. And they had all kind of crazy promotions. And it was because there were so many guys, Americans who stayed there on bases after the war, World War II, then guys who are on the bases permanently or currently. And so then they were so successful, they made Oliver president of NFL Europe. And in Germany at that time was the one that stood out the most. And these were preseason games. You know, England got tired of preseason games. I don't blame them. They knew a dud when they saw a dud. And then we give them the Jaguars. And so I think they will do the maximum. You know, they want to go other places. They want to go to Paris. They want to go to China. They want to play over there. And I think they're going to do it. I remember before the Oilers moved to Nashville, they were talking about a game in Hong Kong, and I had just come back from Hong Kong and loved it. And so I told the people of influence in the NFL office who I knew, because I wanted the Oilers to play there so I could get a free trip. I said, let me remind you guys that the Oilers drew the biggest crowd in the history of pro football in Mexico City at Estadio Azteca, 112,000. And they also drew the biggest crowd in Tokyo. They drew the biggest crowd in the Sun Bowl in El Paso / Juarez. And I said, the Oilers know how to draw fans. And they said, yeah, but didn't they play the Cowboys in all those games? I said, yeah, but that's just a minor thing.
Johnny Mac Takes Hong Kong is a movie that I would definitely watch. I'd pay good money to watch that.
Spring
John.
Breakers too.
John McLean joins us. Let's get Franco involved in that project also. Cal McNair at an event says that, quote, Hannah and I don't make the picks. We'll make it clear there when talking about whether or not he forced the hand of Nick Caserio to draft quarterback and C.J. Stroud. He didn't say, John, that he didn't have any influence over the pick or that he didn't suggest they should take C.J. Stroud, but he said that I don't make the picks. What do you make of his comments and what really went down on draft night?
I have written multiple times for years, including at the NFL owners meetings in Phoenix. I've said on every talk show I do multiple times, tweeted multiple times, the McNairs have nothing to do with players who are acquired here. Nothing. But there are nincompoops around the country who still can't figure it out, who are clueless about how this organization is run, and they don't tell them who to pick. They pay him good money. Nick Caserio has in his contract. He has final say. If Caserio didn't want to hire DeMeco Ryans, even though the McNairs did, they wouldn't have made him do it. It's his choice. And they breathed a sigh of relief when he wanted him, because they did too. So all to say otherwise, and it's amazing, the national media still can't figure this out. It just blows me away. So they try, because it's been out there a lot. Cal McNair, before their annual charity golf tournament, said that. Maybe people believe it. They have nothing to do with the acquisition of players, whether it's free agents or draft choices.
John, what do you think about this theory? I think this whole thing is out there because national media that predicted that the Texans were out on C.J. Stroud and thought that they don't want to act like they were fooled. So the better explanation for them is to say, oh, well, the owner must have gotten involved because all of my sources say they didn't want C.J. Stroud. So must have been the owner that made them make the pick. I think that's what's going on, is a lot of national media doesn't just want to come out and say, well, I was wrong on what I reported on C.J. Stroud and the Texans.
Well, first of all, I'm not national, I'm local, but I was wrong on what I reported because I had him taking Tyree Wilson.
Well, you've said
but
it.
I know it.
That's the difference.
I know
is you'll
it
own
had
it.
nothing
Yeah.
to do with the McNairs. I got into it with one prominent national guy who was just sure his sources were correct, telling me that DeMeco Ryans made the pick. And I said, no. Then he called the next day and said, oh, I'm sorry. Cal McNair made him take the pick. And I said, no. How many different times do I have to tell you? Do you think you know more about the way this team operates than I do? Well, my sources. I said, do your sources know more than I do? I'm telling you that is wrong. But chat like that's as good an explanation as I've heard. I remember right before the draft, another prominent national person I have great respect for said Cal McNair was getting more involved. And people here that know what's going on laughed their butts off because that's not the way they operate. They keep he and his wife, Hannah, who's very influential, up to date on everything they do. And then when they want to do something, they tell them what they're going to do, and McNair sign off on it. They didn't want to trade DeAndre Hopkins. They didn't want to let J.J. Watt go, but they left those decisions up to their people. And unfortunately, a lot of decisions stunk.
John, I think it's an interesting question to debate here. Who's in a better spot in year one, Anthony Richardson or C.J. Stroud? They both have run games. They both have offensive lines that the teams feel like will be better going into next year. First-year head coaches are in both spots. Who do you point to?
Stroud, because he played a whole lot more than Richardson. Richardson, playing 13 games in college and not playing very well, was drafted number 4 overall because of what he can do, not because of what he did. I mean, his completion percentage, you guys saw him, was in like 58%. Yes, he's got incredible ability. So did Jamarcus Russell. So did Vince Young. He had incredible ability. There's a lot of quarterbacks who, I'm not saying with a whole package like he is, but they could run. They had great arms. They could throw on the run. They were good people. Either they got bad coaching or they got an owner who was impatient, who pulled the plug on that regime and everything changed, or they were just not what they were built up to be. And so I would think Richardson, I don't know how quick he'll play. I'm writing a column right now for GallerySports.com that no matter what DeMeco Ryans, Nick Caserio, or Cal McNair say, the plan is for Stroud to start the first game. And I would love to see it, DeMeco Ryans' first game here. The first game I look to every year when the schedule comes out is when the Texans play in Nashville, because that's my favorite city. And I'm kind of hoping this year it's later, where we have a better chance of Stroud and Will Levis playing against each other than early when Ryan Tannehill is going to be playing.
Chris Ballard says they drafted Anthony Richardson because he didn't want to see Richardson become a star somewhere else on a different roster. What do you make of that? And the fact, and I'm curious on this, the Colts are openly telling everyone who will listen, it is going to be uglier before it's pretty with our quarterback situation. But we feel like we're going to get the most out of this ceiling. What are the Texans saying about their rookie compared to the rookie who Irsay is saying is starting?
Yeah, they're not saying he's starting. They're saying he'll have to earn it. They like their quarterback room, which includes him and Davis Mills and Case Keenum, who was signed to be the mentor for the young quarterback. I keep going back. I said as soon as he was signed, he's here for mentor a quarterback. And then I lost track of that, had him taking defensive end when I should have had him taking quarterback all along, because that was a plan. And it was a dead giveaway that was a plan when they signed Case Keenum. His third time he's been with this franchise, and he's still beloved in the city of Houston. And so I think that I think they're all going to struggle.
Yeah.
You know, it's very rare that you see Dak Prescott won as a rookie, Russell Wilson won as a rookie, Peyton Manning threw 28 interceptions as a rookie. And so you just don't know. So much of it has to do with players around him. The Texans still lack a big-time receiver, and Robert Woods may be their best receiver. Nico Collins is, but he's hurt too much. It's going into his third year. And Tank Dell, a third-round pick from Houston, who scored more touchdowns than any player in college football last year. People here are really excited for him. He's small, but he's so quick. You know, anytime you got a little guy named Tank who scores a lot of touchdowns, fans are going to fall in love with him no matter where he's from. So Stroud doesn't have the beneficiary of really good receivers. He's in the same situation the Titans are in. Actually, all of these teams, you know, they still need to add a go-to receiver unless one develops, but you can't do everything in one off season. So I would say Stroud has a better chance to start well than Richardson simply because of the experience.
Right after the draft, or maybe it was in the final day of the draft, an ESPN executive said, hey, Mel Kiper he needs to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Do you agree? And can you explain the contributor wing and the media wing? Because players are outraged that Kiper would get in over a player, and that's just simply not how it works.
Well, he's not. No, it isn't. And that's a good point, Jonathan. First of all, there's a contributors category. He won't be in that. The Pro Football Hall of Fame selects every year a broadcaster to go into the Hall of Fame. Pro Football Writers America has one per year that our organization votes in. It's the greatest honor you can get. And I was honored in 2006, and that's still, along with the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, the epitome of our profession. And so Kiper would be, they call it the P. Rozelle Award. And
yes.
There's a lot of competition for that. And everybody they take is deserving. And I think Mel Kiper's deserving. He started first year when it was on ESPN, the late, great Joe Bucksbaum from Pro Football Weekly. He was on there, but he didn't sound good. He didn't look good. And then they went with this young guy with a big hairdo who worked in his parents' basement and put out his own draft book, Mel Kiper, and the rest is history. So I think, yes, he deserves to be in. But as far as being a contributor, we got owners, commissioners, coaches that deserve it way more than Mel Kiper. I think he would be a great selection for the P. Rozelle Award. And the one that I want to see get in the most, if I'm owners, is Bud Adams. I think it's preposterous Bud's not in there because you can't write the history of the pro football without Bud. And the coach is Buddy Parker. He won 2 championships with the Lions, and that was in the 50s. If you can win 2 championships with the Detroit Lions, you ought to be in the Hall of Fame.
Statue.
So, John, he's not eligible for the contributor, right? That's like Ed Sable's in that, owners.
Now, he could be. Sure, anybody
he's eligible.
Has anything to do would be as a contributor, but he's not going to get in over the owners and coaches, and his would be
because this
come from the Hall of Fame, the Pete Rozelle Award.
I'm glad Hutton asked this question because I wanted to clarify this with you about the different wings of it, because I went through and looked at the list of the contributor category, and there's not a single person that's not employed by an NFL team or the NFL. Ed Sable was one, but he was NFL Films. So there's no broadcast. There's no outside media that's in that wing. But Mel Kiper, you're saying, could be the once-a-year broadcaster member that enters the Hall of Fame. Okay.
Yeah, the contributors category is people that have contributed to the success of the NFL, either as a coach, a general manager, somebody like the Sables, Ed and Steve. Ed Sable created NFL Films. And Art McNally, the great official, who's supervisor of official. Art McNally made it. But Mel's best chance is to be selected for the Pete Rozelle Award by the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
John, who are you buying now that Aaron Rodgers is gone from the NFC North? Who are you buying more stock in? The Bears and what they've been building, or the Lions? You just mentioned them. They got a Hall of Famer who actually won titles there in Detroit. Or the Lions and what they've been building recently?
Oh, I don't know why anybody'd be fired up about the Bears. They were the worst team in football last year. And I watched them barely beat the Texans, as bad as they were. So I think that Detroit, which went 8-2 over the last 10 games, the defense played so much better under the coordinator, Aaron Glenn. And Dan Campbell, people made fun of him that first year. He's done a hell of a job. Their offense is tremendous. I'll tell you what's weird. They got rid of two running backs that combined for, 25 rushing touchdowns. And DeAndre Swift had about 3 as a receiver, and they're both gone. And they've got a rookie, Jahmyr Gibbs, and I can't remember who the other one is. But they're taking a heck of a chance for a team that likes to run the ball a lot, especially when they get down close to the goal line. And I would hope that part of their game, they know what they're doing, because you don't want all that pressure on their quarterback, Jared Goff.
John, I know what I'm about to ask comes from unnamed sources here, but why are so many unnamed sources around the league hating on Howie Roseman and the love he's getting in Philly?
I don't know why anybody should. Roseman's done a great job. I mean, what was it? 3 years ago, they won like 6 games or something like that, and then Jalen Hurts matured with Shane Steichen as the offensive coordinator, calling the plays. They've had some players fall into their laps, which is good. And Jalen Carter could be a great player, or he might be a bust, or he might be mediocre. There's been a lot of great defensive players like Jadeveon Clowney. He was by far the highest rated player in 2014, and he's still playing, although he's a mercenary again and hadn't picked a new team. But he's never had 10 sacks, but he's had 9. He's been great against the run, but he still is not as good as he was supposed to be. People are talking about him for the Hall of Fame. So they stockpile linemen, and they seem to know what they're doing. It's tough this year when you're replacing both coordinators. So far, they've been able to do that. Howie Roseman deserves all the credit he can get.
Finally, John, the crackdown and the investigation that we're seeing in college baseball, and specifically with Iowa State, with multiple programs that they're investigating, Alabama baseball team last week. This puts the penalties, albeit harsh, in full light for what the NFL is trying to avoid, trying to send a message and get out front and say, hey, don't do it or you're out 6 games. And that's just if you bet on sports, period. And if you bet on our league, a minimum of a year, maybe more, because it's listed as indefinitely. I'm thinking of their CBA and the penalties involved with this compared to what college baseball and others are now going to have to look at from the college angle.
First of all, this is like cheating in the old days before cheating was legal. They'd get 2 or 3 schools and give them probation where everybody knew everybody was cheating.
Yeah.
And I think why guys will use their own names. If you want to make a bet on somebody, have somebody do it. Don't use your name. And we'd be crazy the way we promote gambling today to expect guys not to do it. I've got friends that tell me that that gambling is big in middle school and then high school. And so it would be in college, and it's hard to promote it and expect them not to do it. It doesn't surprise me on the college level, but in the NFL, you got to be stupid to get caught gambling.
Hey, what did Mattress Mac tell Patrick Mahomes about the bet that he made that he lost? Did you see this?
I saw it, but I don't have any idea because I haven't talked to him since he got back, and I'm going to ask him.
Okay.
And people felt sorry because Mac bet 1.2 million on the horse that didn't win. But I'll tell you what, he had a promotion that went for weeks. That if you buy $5,000 worth of furniture and the favorite wins, you get your furniture free. No telling how many millions he wanted selling furniture.
Well, I think he
never really loses.
Mahomes was there at the Derby, and I think Mac went up to him and said, "Hey, man, you cost me millions."
I think that
you
he
lost me
probably
millions.
I love
told
Mac
him that.
so
He's
much.
cost him. Mac was. I know this. I think Mac bet on Cincinnati to win. Yeah, I know he did because
Okay.
he told me he did. 2 years ago, he bet on Cincinnati to win the Super Bowl, and he probably bet on some more this year. But he sells that furniture. People are thinking, you know what? We should go buy some furniture. We got a chance to get it free. So let's $5,000.
GallerySports.com is where you can check out the podcast with McLean and Mattress Mac, and you can read the great work of John McLean.
John will
there.
ask him that question on the podcast.
I
I'm
can't
sure
wait to
he'll
hear
get
that
into
conversation. John, thank you as
That's
always.
the first thing I'll ask him is
Good.
what he talked to Patrick Mahomes about before the Kentucky Derby.
Love having you on, man. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. I can't wait to talk to you next week.
Yep, same here.
John, we too look forward to you coming to Nashville. We always look
Yes,
for that on
yes.
the
Chad.
NFL schedule. That's what we're always looking for
Absolutely.
first.
John McLean. Follow him on social at McLean_on_NFL. The Pac-12, there is one president, Chad, who has a theory, a reason, an excuse.
We all have theories.
Reason and excuse? I don't know which one it is.
Theories,
For
reasons,
why
excuses.
the Pac-12 doesn't have their television rights deal and doesn't have the proper suitors yet. That's next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Glad you're with us. 6th and Peabody, our location. Craft Brewers Conference is going on here in Music City. We'll be trying some special Yeehaw brews coming up.
Where's our beer?
It's coming up in about an hour.
It's on the way?
Yeah. They've selected two of them.
Are we going with something else with notes of honeydew or Amarillo?
Let's see. We're going to have the hazy juicy IPA.
Passion fruit is what I'm guessing.
This is the one with Amarillo.
Okay,
with a
good.
hint of Amarillo. So that's the one Chad will be trying. And then the other one's a fruited IPA made
Can't
right
wait.
here on site in Nashville. A bold citrus hop note
Can't wait.
with tangy tangerine finish. It says.
Tangerine and passion fruit and Amarillo all on the same day.
Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. You can
Very
go wrong
excited.
with the Pac-12 media deal, though. Bad optics and layoffs is what one president is pointing to. And while he may not be wrong, Kirk Schultz, president of Washington State, is saying, hey, over the last 5 months, this has been the worst financial climate to negotiate a media rights contract, where if you want to be on ESPN or name a network, they're trying to either avoid layoffs or avoid the fact that they're going to spend millions more while laying off employees, longtime employees, pointing to financial issues. He's like, so this is the weathering of the storm we've got to get past as a conference before we even get close to finding the right media partner for our contract. But, I mean, we've seen this happen before. ESPN's laying off employees right now and recently.
All of Disney.
And they paid how much for the SEC? You know, they're acquiring the media rights deal and they're trying to negotiate more for the expanded college football playoff. Yeah, I mean, I don't see that as a huge deterrent, especially if the companies, Chad, are getting value versus what they're spending, and it's a product that they can air live on a college football game day, which the Pac-12 would provide, especially late night.
See, I think it's the reverse of it. You know, this is like anything with the market now. Confidence breeds spending.
Yep.
And then as long as you can project an air of confidence in what you're doing and growth, then things are going to turn out well for you when you're at the top of your game. Same goes for these conferences. I mean, the coverage of the Pac-12 mixed with external negativity and internal negativity with the conference has led to this perfect cocktail of an untouchable resource right now. That's where it is. It's not because of optics and layoffs with media companies. It's because media companies and everyone, sports fans, media covering college sports, they're all down on the Pac-12. And sometimes, and this is, I think it's real with them, but whether it's real or it's imagined, it becomes real when the forecast is so bleak. And the forecast is bleak right now for the Pac-12, and that becomes their reality.
The surprising part to me is all of the universities currently are, to some extent, banding together, at least from the front-facing viewpoint.
Well, on certain issues, they're trying to come up with a consensus. I don't know if they're banding together when it comes to media rights.
But they're banding together and keeping the conference together, optically. This is another statement for that.
The member schools.
Yes.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, like whenever Texas A&M, whenever we had the expansion into the SEC, prior to Texas and Oklahoma, but you had the group of schools that were supposed to be together in partnership to vote no if Texas ever wanted in or if Oklahoma wanted in, and then of course they voted yes. Right? They're going to help Texas A&M keep those colleges out. And by doing so, in the future, you would help schools in proximity to us. You would keep them out of the SEC as well. And, of course, that doesn't happen because ultimately you're looking to pair up with someone. Who's Washington State pairing up with? They're desperate for a media rights deal.
People are loyal to their own options. Yes. And when your options are limited, you're going to be very loyal to that option. So Washington State and some of these other programs are going to be very loyal. Cal, very loyal to the Pac-12 because they don't have many other options. If I'm Washington and Oregon right now, I'm looking around. I've got a wandering eye on some other conferences to see if there's a better opportunity because right now, Pac-12 is not one of them.
There's an opportunity for the Lakers to take out the Warriors. They're now up 3-1, and we've got some 2-2 series tipping off tonight across the NBA. Headlines across Hot Mic and the OutKick Network next.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers. Number two pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number three pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number four pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no. We gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying, even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back, and if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Just like that, the final hour has arrived on this Tuesday
It's already
edition
2
of
hours
OutKick.
in. Are you kidding me? This has flown by today.
Chad, I'd never lie to you.
I thought it was 3 o'clock Central.
Would never lie to you.
And instead, it's 5 o'clock Eastern. See how I did that? That switch right there?
And it's time. That means it's time for you to go to YouTube and subscribe to the OutKick channel.
Oh, yes. I'm already subscribed.
Like, subscribe, share, and join Chad in the chat. Chatting away. What's the chat like today?
Chat's been good today. We've run into one poster's posted the last 5 posts, which I like that level of activity, but we got to get some other people in there posting, responding.
Not a bot?
I'm on that. No.
It's not
David.
Penelope.
He's in here every day. This is a person.
Not Penelope?
Penny, as
Penny,
I like to call her. Penelope Vasquez, who I'm convinced is Sleepy Danny. But I'll talk to him about that another time.
Might be.
I like to call her Penny.
Chad, the Lakers have the Warriors on the brink. Am I foolish for counting out the Warriors and Steph Curry?
You're foolish only because they're about to go home and win because they typically win at home. But I don't think so, Hutton, for this reason. They're miserable on the road.
This is a Lakers team that can win it all.
Yes.
Now, they need – we have certainly seen a back and forth with Anthony Davis, and that took a bit of a turn where he was more consistent after having a nice performance in Game 4, but I mean in Game 3. But here they are up 3-1, returning back to Golden State, and I think this is a Lakers team that can close them out because they've already used the ammunition. They've already used the jet fuel of the speech that it took from Steph Curry the last time to knock out the Kings.
Yeah, it's been crazy. By the way, on cue.
Penelope?
In the YouTube chat, suddenly the woman by the name of Johanna Martinez says hi. I don't think that's by accident.
Thank you, Johanna.
Yeah.
Lonnie Walker, the fourth, last night's fourth quarter, 15 points, I believe, put them over the top.
Well,
they've had role players do this.
You had last night Klay Thompson and Steph Curry go a combined 6 for 25. from 3. That clearly cost the Warriors. What else cost them? Stupidity down the stretch. That was terrible by Steph Curry late in the game. Shot selection was awful. When he had Anthony Davis on him and was jacked up 2 terrible shots late, very un-Steph Curry-like. I thought Klay Thompson shot them out of it a little bit in the fourth quarter as well. Disappointing for the Warriors. They've been terrible on the road. They had a great shot at a win in L.A. last night. I think they'll go back home and win, but I don't think they're winning in L.A. when they go back. So it's going to be a Lakers series win. I believe. I'm with you on it.
And what's up with their road woes, man? That makes no sense to me with the mental makeup of this team. And the shot selection, isn't that on Steve Kerr? Or is that just, hey, we're coaching one of the all-time greats, do what you want? Do you have to rein that in at any point? Or is it too panic mode if he does that based on, I mean, they win championships doing that?
I don't think if you're Steve Kerr, I'm not going to get on Steve Kerr for not getting on to Steph Curry or Klay Thompson about shot selection. What it is on Steve Kerr, though, to do is talk to them about, hey, you're 2 of the all-time greatest shooters in the history of the game. So I'm not going to sit here and micromanage you and say, don't take this shot from this far out or whatever. But we do need to understand that we can do other things late in the game. When you get a mismatch, like Anthony Davis on, you don't settle for the fadeaway 35-footer in that setting. That is on Steve Kerr to make his guys understand. But I think they will. I mean, Steph Curry's going to adjust. He knows he made a mistake on that shot too.
Yep, and he had a triple-double. I mean, he's got great performances, but again, that's the headline for Curry's the triple-double and not the shot selection, because we're used to seeing him hit them from the other side of the floor during warm-ups. I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, take this guy out, but at some point, if you're down 3-1 going into the next matchup, it's like, hey, you've got to be smart about this and let's just get the win. Going in and get it back into a series where we're not on the brink of falling to the Lakers. As I know, and I realize the Warriors are a 6th seed, but they're finally healthy, and they've got to get the road game going, which they can't do.
No, Jordan Poole's been a gigantic disappointment in this series. Steph Curry not knowing they had a timeout when he threw the ball over his head to no one after getting the jump ball. Just uncharacteristically dumb plays by the Warriors. Late in that game cost them.
The Knicks, they're trailing the Heat 3-1 now. And let's see, Miami out-rebounded them 44-35. They crushed them on second-chance points. And if there was any chance of a Knicks rally, it's them. It was the Heat crashing the boards that allowed them to go 6 from 22 to finish the game, but still win the game and take a 3-1 series lead. Butler is so fun to watch, man.
He is dominant. I mean, he is the best player in the NBA playoffs so far.
I think he's the most underrated great player in the league.
Yeah.
And that's saying something because they push their superstars. But you don't go to Jimmy Butler for that, right?
No, he's awesome, and he does it quietly. And I don't mean by he doesn't speak.
I know.
His game is not loud and audacious. It's a quiet way of going about dominating the game. Yeah, I think that's a good example. Kawhi Leonard's a good comp. But he does it in such a methodical way. And you look up, and he has just filled up the stat sheet.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. But also, Hutton, he's got humidity and heat on his side, which apparently is a big factor in indoor arenas for the NBA.
So Mike Greenberg said this morning, hey, why are the Knicks struggling? Just take a look at the temperature outside the arena.
Particularly from Jalen, was how hard it is to go down to Miami and play this time of year. And I know people will immediately associate that with the nightlife and all that. But according to Jalen, there's more than that. There's also just the reality of the temperature change, the heat, the geography, being down there for 3 days. It sort of saps a little bit of your energy and your strength. We talk about that primarily in football. I know this is an indoor sport. But, I mean, the Knicks, whatever it is, Jimmy Butler has just destroyed them.
Yeah, so, I mean, what zaps you of your energy is going out all night and taking in the nightlife of Miami. I don't feel sorry for guys playing in an air-conditioned arena in Florida. Zapping of energy.
Well, and it's also, the geography. What about the geography? There are way further flights. I'm going to give a geography. Chad Withrow, 5th grade geography B champion from Glayville Elementary. That's a true fact. I want to give Mike Greenberg a little geography lesson. There are places that are geographically further away from New York City than Miami that would be a rougher flight to get to, and geographically could be tougher. Like, I don't know, say of Denver, if they were ever to make it back to an NBA Finals and take on the Nuggets. That would be geographically a lot different because of altitude and mountains and also further mileage to travel into. Flying from New York and Miami is not a big geographical feat. And you get down there. I've been in South Florida and Miami. It's very flat. You're not walking around a lot of hills. So I'm not sure about the geography of what he's talking about. There's definitely scenery that's different than a lot of places in America.
A lot of head turning.
But give me a break. I mean, he says, I know about, people are going to point to the nightlife. And well, yeah, if you're experiencing the Miami nightlife on South Beach, then your play the next night is going to be affected. I don't know that these guys are doing that. They could be in their hotel room all the time. But here's the deal. Their hotel rooms have, wait for it, air conditioning that would protect them from the heat and humidity. This is a lazy and dumb argument by Mike Greenberg. Maybe one of the dumbest I've ever heard.
And they're missing Hero and Oladipo, by the way, the Heat.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's
the
ridiculous.
Geography and the heat and the weather is zapping their energy.
I've said on the show this week, I'm paying attention to Nuggets Suns because now we've got a little I'm intrigued in how Jokic responds, and we'll get to his fine in a moment. But is the coverage of why the Suns sucked in Denver, the altitude? Is Greenberg saying the same thing there? Which is a factor, no matter if it's air conditioned or not in the arena.
I just want to take this moment to applaud Jokic for playing so well, given how he had to go from the geography of altitude to a desert, to go to Phoenix and put up 53 in a desert like
it's
that.
It's a dry heat, though, Chad.
I mean, come on. Like, not only is this guy fighting the Suns crowd and the Suns owner, who's ripping the ball from him and he's getting a technical on, but the dude's out there playing in a desert the whole time. You know how dry that heat is and how just dry mouth you're going to get when you play? What a just heroic performance by Jokic. This will be next on ESPN with Mike Greenberg. This will be the next argument. It's so dumb.
Jokic
and Jalen Rose also argued this, by the way about the weather.
I know.
Come on.
Of course he did.
You're really searching for. These are highly paid professional athletes in tip-top shape.
Yeah.
I don't think a walk from their hotel room.
Benefiting from load management.
I mean, think about this also. If they really, if that was an issue, if they were to go on the road to Miami and they were all to a man to say, this damn weather has zapped our energy, they have the ability to stay in an air-conditioned hotel suite and go right from that room down to a buffet in a meeting area or some banquet hall in their hotel, back up to their room. So what you're telling me is the walk from their hotel to the team bus and then from the team bus to wherever the practice facility is and or arena is so taxing physically because of the weather and geography that it has zapped their energy.
And the weight of whatever they're wearing.
That is
the wardrobe.
Ludicrous. What a terrible argument.
They've got Project Runway every night.
Yeah, I mean, if the weather's so zapping, stay in your room the entire time. You have the ability to do that unless you're at a shoot-around or at the game.
Jokic is not getting off scot-free, but it's a slap on the wrist, a $25,000 fine. I think we mentioned this yesterday.
He shouldn't have been fined, though.
Well, but based on the optics of what happened here, Chad, let me just – Jokic, if he's not fined, and you have Ishbia who's saying don't fine him, you know exactly what the headlines on ESPN are because we've already seen it. Racism. Got black players getting fined for doing things with fans, and they're admitting that the owner's a fan, and we're not going to fine Jokic. I can hear it now. I can hear J.J. Redick trying to defend the argument that whatever is on first take, just like I heard about the MVP.
Yeah.
The NBA had to fine him something, and this guy, pisses $25,000. So I'm not overly concerned with the fine as much as I am. The NBA did this for optics.
Yeah, you're right. Someone would have argued, man, if this was, Rasheed Wallace in his heyday, he would have been thrown out of the league for getting into an altercation with an NBA owner or courtside. So I can see that part of it. I also think, you say it's basically couch money, pocket change for these guys, which it is. It's also that for the NBA.
What's a tax
when you're talking about $25,000, and I'm thinking
the tax write-off.
Yeah, at my core, I'm opposed to optics things. And I know this is what it is, but it's just such a dumb...
At their core, at the league's core, they're not opposed to that.
And a big business in general, I understand, is all about that. But it just seems so stupid.
And Ishbia admitted that.
$25,000.
You had the NBA owner saying, hey, I don't think he should be fined or suspended. And it's not like he was suspended. I mean, I think that's the thing, is no harm, no foul. And that's exactly how it should have been handled yesterday, the day after. And it's even after, it was the morning after we had Jokic and others from the team say, oh, yeah, about what happened over there. You're talking about the fan? Pointing out Ishbia. They knew who he was. So Ishbia still said all that afterwards. I applaud both sides of this, honestly. I thought it was handled well, and I thought the league, for optic purposes, it's not like they came over the top. This is a slap on the wrist, a $25,000 fine. Consider what players have been fined for just missing a game, or a team has been fined for load management whenever ABC and ESPN want the primetime game in the best slot on Sunday afternoon, and they're fining teams for sitting players on the road. I don't take this as much of anything other than the NBA agrees with Matt Ishbia and Nikola Jokic.
Do you think that Adam Silver talked to Jokic about this and said...
I don't even think it was Adam Silver who devies his fine. Isn't it the former Piston who does this?
No, it's Joe Dumars. But I'm saying, do you think in this case that Adam Silver, because it was so high profile, just talked to him and said, hey, you're getting a $25,000 fine because that's what we have to do in this setting?
Can you imagine Kendrick Perkins today?
We don't really care.
Imagine Kendrick Perkins today.
Yeah, he's got that. That opinion was floating in there for sure.
It had to be.
Yeah.
It had to be. Hit us up with your thoughts. You can join us in the chat on OutKick with the YouTube channel. So the other headlines that are out there today. So the Brewers are saying they're taking a reverse course on extending beer sales. So we had mentioned the games are faster in Major League Baseball. And because of that, they're extending beer sales because they're not having as many beer sales. The problem with, at least from the Brewers' perspective, is it was averaging out to about an extra 15-minute window of keeping it open from the 7th inning until the 8th inning. And they were not seeing tremendous jumps in sales when they can actually cut the people working in the concessions then, and it would be more financially beneficial for them. They're not saying this. This is the truth, though. This is why your hotel doesn't wash your towels every day. They're saving money on that. They're not saving the environment. They're just pointing to that as the reason. The Brewers are saying, hey, we're actually not selling that much because it's the 8th inning and fans are preparing for their drive home, so they're not going to buy.
You mean fans got tired of $17 beer night and decided that maybe the 6th inning beer was the last one they're going to have?
I don't know if fans are tired of it, but fans line up and pay for it.
Yeah.
You seen the lines at last call in the 7th inning?
No doubt. I've seen it at second intermission of hockey games also.
10-minute mark. No doubt.
People are running in there to get it before the third period starts.
Yeah.
This is a change of convenience that they had one major league player speak out and say, hey, this is not a great idea to just continue beer sales and send people home.
That was a couple weeks ago.
And on their way.
This is
exactly what I'm saying. Convenient that they had the one guy speak out, and then 2 weeks later, when they try it out and show that they're not making a ton of money off of it, they can claim moral high ground and say, you know what, that player was right, guys. We're going to step away from this and not do it. And in reality, it's all about the money.
Yeah. Well, the moral high ground would be, we're just not going to extend sales because we want you to get home safe.
Well, the moral high ground would have also been, you know what, we're going to do the 6th inning now. We're going to take an inning off of it. You know what, that player's right. We're going from the 8th, screw the 6th, to the 5th. We're cutting beer sales off in the 5th inning because he is so right. That I could teach a class.
We're the Brewers.
On winning the moral high ground.
We're the Brewers, but we're going to sell Old Jules.
As the Milwaukee Brewers, first off, we need to change that name. Write that down. If the Cleveland Indians can become the Cleveland Guardians, then by God, the Milwaukee Brewers can change their name too. And also as moral high ground chief priest is what I'm going to call myself now. Not only are we going to go back to the 7th inning and stop beer sales, we're going to go to the 5th inning as the Milwaukee Brewers, and we're going to lead the way
right as our starter
morally
leaves the mound.
in Major League Baseball.
When our starter leaves the mound, final call.
This is the final decree from moral high ground chief priest Chad Withrow. You're welcome.
Final thing, speaking of money, I was watching the F1 race here at 6th and Peabody with some friends who are diehard F1 racing fans, more than just the show. They travel internationally. And I asked him, I'm like, financially, like, tell me behind the scenes what's going on here. And he said, let me put this in perspective for you, Hut. The two drivers for Red Bull, or any of the two for any team, the money that is spent on that one race combined is more than a NASCAR season for a team running the full circuit. That is incredible to me. The billions that go into F1. Did you know they can't refuel during a race because the engine runs so hot?
Well,
I didn't know that until Sunday.
I've watched a season and a half of Drive to Survive, so that's the extent of my knowledge of it. But a huge theme in that show, which is what you're hitting on, is the money wins. That it's really hard. All these teams have a lot of money, but the ones, the Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, the ones at the top from a money standpoint, it's really difficult for those bottom-level teams to compete. And there's only, I think there's 10 teams of two. There's 20 cars
drivers.
in every, 20 drivers in every race.
And about 4 guys who can win.
And we're talking about 10 teams. But those bottom 2 or 3 are always, kind of like Major League Baseball in some ways, always strapped to compete because they don't have the money.
Great story coming up with former offensive coordinator in the NFL, now head coach of the New Orleans Breakers, John DeFilippo, who was told by a couple of doctors he may not walk unassisted ever again. And then he trotted out as the head coach of the Breakers in what was a very emotional scene. We'll hit that topic, and we'll dive into some of the quarterbacks he's coached throughout his career. That's all straight ahead on Hot Mic. Recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker, wasn't
right next
it?
to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He's a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. You know, he's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
you go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, you know, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, you know, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you know, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden. Man, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and you know. And I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, "Cuz, like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already. You know?
Yeah.
Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVP. He's like, now, because of man, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah. You know, now I'm good. Okay, all right, well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working in the morning news, shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about season. How you feeling? You know, you ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro, what do you think? I'm living under a rock? And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
Hot Mike, Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, Robert De Niro is 79 years old, and he's welcoming his 7th child. He's confirming that he's going to be a father for a 7th time at 79.
I don't know whether to be impressed or frightened for
Maybe-
Robert De
maybe
Niro
both.
and the child.
Props to Bob.
In New York over the weekend, we were in Robert De Niro's neighborhood at one point and almost walked over to his building. I
Wow.
was Googling where he lives.
You'd be babysitting.
And I watched over there. I could have been handed a child to say,
Right.
take this child around the neighborhood, please.
John DeFilippo is the head coach of the New Orleans Breakers, and they're off to a 4-0 start, doing some winning, and that's certainly what DeFilippo did as an offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and more. Great to have you on, Coach, and congrats on the great start to the season.
I appreciate it, guys. It's great to be here.
We referenced right before you jumped on the emotional scene of jogging onto the field as the head coach of the Breakers. Based on what doctors had told you, where you may not, at least 2 of them that I was reading about at the time told you, you may not walk unassisted ever again. What exactly happened, and what was it like to coach, not just coach the Breakers on that day on April 16th, but to actually think, you know what, I want to run out here by myself unassisted, and it's going to prove a point to me mentally and show everyone that I'm overcoming this?
Absolutely, and it was an emotional day. It still is for me when I think about it, because I was in so much pain for a long time. It was just great to be able to run, and the night I'll never forget that night when I got that call, and the doctors were telling me I would probably never walk without a walker again. I called my parents and I said, that's not going to happen. I said, I will run out of that field for our first game, and I did, and it was I hate to say I was proud of myself, but I was, just for the mental toughness it took to keep fighting this, what I have, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and explain what happened. And by the way, you should be proud. I mean, I don't think you should hesitate in saying that. Getting the phone call and the sudden, just a drain of that, trying to realize what this is. What are you dealing with, Coach?
I have this condition called ankylosing spondylitis, and basically what it does is I have a very severe arthritic spine, and so what it does, it affects your joints. It picks joints in your body randomly that it wants to affect. And my condition happened to pick my right foot, and the night I entered the Mayo Clinic, my right foot was almost twice the size of my left one, and it was going up my leg, the swelling and the pain. I wasn't able to walk for really pretty much the previous 2.5, 3 months at all, without a walker or a wheelchair or a scooter. And so I was very fortunate that I live right outside of Jacksonville, Florida, and I got a chance to go to the Mayo Clinic, and the doctors there were just awesome. They're still taking great care of me, via Zoom, like I'm doing with you guys here.
Yeah.
And they're with me every step of the way. And I can't thank Dr. Sullivan and her team enough for, number one, finding out what I have, but number two, being so gracious and kind in treating me.
Did this happen during the year off from football, or was this prior to that? Like, what led to all this? How fast did this come on?
It came on pretty quick. Right around Christmas time, right before Christmas, I was putting on my shoe, and it was like, man, my foot hurts. It's weird. It's like, it was just an annoying pain. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and it kept getting swell. The swelling kept getting a lot worse. They thought I had gout for a while, and then the gout medicine wasn't helping. And, I was in and out of the hospital, and, getting all kinds of MRIs and CAT scans. And, finally, like they saw, when I was in the Mayo, rheumatology people saw a little smudge on my pelvis that they didn't like. It was literally almost like a fingerprint smudge. And they said, there's something about that we don't like. And so they put me actually in the MRI machine for over 2 hours. I was fully enclosed for over 2 hours without a break. And they did a full back MRI spine on me. And then they found out what I had. My pelvis and my low back is very, very inflamed.
John DeFilippo, our guest on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow.
Well, best of luck moving forward with that, and congrats on being able to do this so far and making as far as you have throughout this season.
And coaching.
And coaching and being on the sideline and everything else is really cool to see.
Thank you.
Dealing with that on top of being a first-year coach in this league with guys who are coming back for a second year that have been around for the experience, what has that challenge been like for you entering this league in year two with some other guys who had that 1 year head start?
Sure. I'll tell you what, the first thing that I did as a head coach is the smartest move I made is I hired a bunch of people that are a lot smarter than me and know a lot more football than me. So, I mean, if you look down the roster of our coaching staff, it's unbelievable. The amount of experience we have. And that was the first, I guess, smart thing I did was hiring guys that are really good football coaches. And so that they're doing a great job. They're putting guys in places that have success, and when we're flying around, and our guys are having fun. That's what the best part is as a head coach. I want to make sure that our guys are having a good time. We work when it's time to work. When it's time to keep it light, we keep it light, and make sure that this is an enjoyable work environment for everybody involved. So that was the ground, what we tried to establish from a philosophical standpoint. And then our guys have just bought in. They've done an unbelievable job of buying in. And this is a player's game 100%. Professional football is a player's game. So they've done an unbelievable job of buying in and playing.
We've had Daryl Moose Johnson on the show a bunch of times, and he doesn't duck from the fact that a lot of these guys, their end goal is the NFL. They're playing professional football now, and there are team goals and individual goals within the season. But the ultimate goal for these guys is to make it on an NFL roster. How much do you talk about that with your NFL experience? How much does that come up with guys that you're coaching throughout this season, and you're talking to them and trying to help them one day reach that ultimate goal?
Great question. Well, the first thing we do is we have an NFL schedule. So from a practice standpoint, how long we're on the field, when our players come in the morning, when they leave, it's exactly what the NFL is from an hours standpoint. We don't add plays if we're early, getting off the field. When the plays, I tell the guys, hey guys, when the script's up, the script's up. So as fast as you guys want to practice, shoot, there's some days we're off the field 25 minutes, half an hour early, because our guys are flying around. So that's the number one thing we try to do. The first day I got up in front of the team, this is unlike any other experience I've ever been in, because we have no OTAs, no mini camps. I told the guys, I hope we have 58 new faces here next year. That means that we did our job, and you guys are off to bigger and better things. So I get it. I've been there, been fortunate to win a Super Bowl, been fortunate enough to be at the top of the mountain and have that experience. And I hope everybody has that chance one day. And that's what we're trying to do here.
The impact of Wes Hills is, he's 8 touchdowns in 4 games in this 4-0 start. He's averaging nearly 100 yards rushing per game. You're throwing the football to him out of the backfield. To what Chad is saying, and we saw this last year from USFL to training camps, this is a guy that looks like an NFL-type player.
Yes, Wes is doing a great job. And the thing he's improving on every week as well, which is key to being a running back in the NFL and in all professional football, is pass protection. You saw him Sunday get some great chips on guys. He's running the football hard. He's catching the football. It's not always pretty, but he's catching it. And he's doing a heck of a job. And Wes is one of those guys that he's the first guy, like when we have a look squad on special teams, that we need a guy to jump in there. You almost have to save him from himself at practice to make sure that he gets to the game, and that's why he's having success. I'm a big believer in practice and practice speed, and how you practice really is the way you play.
John DeFilippo, our guest, he's the head coach of the New Orleans Breakers in the USFL. Week 5 is coming up this weekend on Fox and NBC. I want to get your take on some quarterbacks you've been around, either as a coordinator or a coach, and just name recognition, if you don't mind. I won't hit all of them.
Sure.
But Nick Foles recently released, but got his, what you guys did in the run for the Super Bowl when Wentz went down, you were around behind the scenes. How do you describe Nick Foles and that postseason?
Nick is a big believer in himself in a good way. He has great faith, in terms of in his heart. And he has, if you get Nick's trust, if you earn his trust, there's nothing Nick can't do. He trusts the plan. He trusts the coaches. He trusts his teammates. He's a great person off the field. One of the best people I've ever been around. Naturally, a great person, great father, a great son. Nick's just a guy that does a lot of things really good. And I've been fortunate. I brought Nick with me down to Jacksonville and to Chicago. So he and I have a very, very special relationship, and been through a lot of highs and a lot of lows together. So, when you go through those experiences with somebody, you have a very unique relationship with them.
I'll set up the next guy by describing this. Normally, when a wide receiver is having on one of the all-time best seasons we've ever seen. The quarterback gets the credit for the passing yards and everything behind it. It was all about Justin Jefferson, and it wasn't about Kirk Cousins this past season in Minnesota. What is Cousins like behind the scenes versus the perception that we all have, where if this is happening with the top quarterbacks in the league, that dude's an MVP candidate, not the wide receiver?
Hey, Kirk can make every single throw with ease. Like when we first got Kirk, I did not think the ball was going to jump off his hand like it did. I told him that, man, you can drive the football. And he's the thing about Kirk, too, people don't give him enough credit for. I'm not sure Kirk's ever missed a game. And he's not the biggest guy in the world. I'm not sure he's ever missed a game in professional football. So the first thing about being a great player is being available.
There's a talent to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, talk about a guy that's smart, can drive the ball, can make every throw, can change his arm angle. Kirk is an unbelievable passer. So I really enjoyed working with him.
Describe.
I give credit where credit's due to Kirk.
Yeah.
People don't realize this about Kirk Cousins. The year he and I were together, he's the only player in the history of the NFL for 4,000 yards, complete 70% of his balls, have 30 or more touchdowns and 10 or less interceptions in the history of the league. So, I agree. Kirk doesn't get the love that he deserves.
And he's set up in a good spot now with Aaron Rodgers in the AFC. Gardner Minshew.
Love him. Oh my goodness. Oh, what a guy to be around on an everyday basis. And I'll tell you, I thought like the gene cutoff genes and all that was like just like a shtick, That's his deal. That's real. And he is as real a guy. I tell you, talk about a guy that players love to play with. Oh my goodness, Gardner Minshew, and dynamic personality, and just an unbelievable guy to be around every day.
One more for you. What is a new spot, a new organization going to mean for Derek Carr?
I had Derek as a rookie. I think change is going to be beneficial for both sides. Sometimes things just take their course in pro football, and you have an amicable split, and those things happen. So I'm really excited. The thing about Derek too is, which I don't know if it's mentioned out there enough, but obviously he and Dennis Allen have a background as well together because Dennis drafted him in Oakland. So there's going to be some ease there with the head coach as long as with that transition to a new city and a new organization.
Hey, Coach, also congrats, because your game on Sunday afternoon on NBC had 828,000 viewers, and that was up against NBA, NHL playoffs, golf, and a Formula One event going on. So that was the highest since week 1 of a year ago. It was a really good weekend for the USFL and television ratings. So that's always important. I know you're not thinking about that when you're coaching the team, but congrats on that as well as your team.
That is awesome news. And there's a lot of people that have worked their tails off to make that happen. You talk about Moose Johnston and Jim Pop, and those guys have just worked their tails off, to accomplish that. So kudos to everyone in our league for those numbers. That's fantastic news.
Saturday schedule, Week 5, starts on USA, and it's followed by a Fox broadcast with Houston and Birmingham at Protective Stadium. Sunday schedule is where Coach DiFilippo is involved. You've got 11 a.m. kickoff Central, noon Eastern, on NBC and Peacock for New Jersey and Philly, followed by on Fox, Memphis and New Orleans. That's a 3 o'clock Eastern kickoff, 2 local there in Birmingham. There's got to be a great story to end on. I'm picking this one. If you've got a better one, fill it in, but this has to hit a home run. You're interning with the Colts, and Peyton Manning takes all the rookies out to dinner, and he asked you to join. Where did he take you? And there has to be a story behind why he invited the intern along with the rookies.
He took us to, oh my gosh, it was a rib place in Anderson, Indiana. Okay, because we were in Anderson, Indiana. Oh my gosh, if you said it, I'd know it, but I can picture it like yesterday. And actually, Peyton picked me up from like my dorm room. Drove me. I got to sit like in his passenger seat. Okay. And talk about an unbelievable experience for a guy that's in college, and Peyton could have been more gracious. The coolest part of that story was it was the night of the Hall of Fame game, all right? And I'm sitting there eating ribs and having a beer with Peyton Manning, thinking this guy's going to be enshrined one day. I'm literally watching the Hall of Fame enshrinement next to a guy that's going to be enshrined one day. And just an unbelievable person. I got to be around his brother, Eli. I was quality control at the Giants for 2 years. Just an unbelievable family, all about football, all about family. They're just an incredible group of people.
Chad was once the taste tester for a shot that was given to Peyton on Broadway.
Yeah, I went to Tennessee and I saw Peyton in a bar in Nashville, and I bought him a shot, and I tried to say from one vol to another, and Jeff Saturday was with him. I'm not joking, and took the shot and tasted it first, as a good offensive lineman would, and then handed Peyton. Then we cheersed. After
amazing.
That. I think I
That's
actually bought one for Jeff Saturday. It's all a little fuzzy. I think I bought one for Jeff Saturday also, and said, "Here are the shots I'm giving." Gave him one. He took it and said, "Yeah, it's fine." And then Peyton took one with me. So it was great. I didn't get to eat ribs with him, but it's the next best thing.
Did you interview directly with Bill Polian for that internship?
Well, what had happened was I had interned the year before for the Carolina Panthers, where Mr. Polian was the GM there.
Okay, got you.
And so this was back pre-email. So I wrote him a handwritten note thanking him for allowing me the opportunity to be a coach's intern there.
I think
and he
that's
wrote
awesome.
me back. And he wrote me back, and he said, this was right before he made the move to Indy. He goes, "Hey, you have another internship with me wherever I am." Okay, and I was like, "Oh, wherever you are." I go, that's weird. And so, like a week later, they announced he was going to Indianapolis. So I went to Indianapolis because I was trying to, again, like anybody, any intern would, try to build your network. And so I was trying. It allowed me a chance to meet a whole new staff and try to impress a whole new staff. And so that's why I turned down the Panthers to go to the Colts year 2.
John DeFilippo has been our guest. USFL back in week 5 this upcoming weekend. He's the head coach of the New Orleans Breakers. You can check them out on Sunday, and the full slate available at theusfl.com. Coach, it's been a pleasure. Hopefully we can catch up soon and talk more quarterbacks and more as the season progresses.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
Appreciate you, man. And congrats on everything going so well thus far with everything behind the scenes there at the clinic, the nurses, the doctors, everybody. It's awesome. And great story there. Uplifting for sure,
Yep.
Chad. And if you haven't seen the video, you should go check it out. You can find it at OutKick.com, but you can also search on YouTube while you're watching the show or right after the show where he's jogging out. He's got the boot on. He's jogging out. And the emotion it's powerful, to say the least.
The only thing we have in common in terms of our football lives is that we both got to drink with Peyton Manning at one point.
You achieved the sports fan's dream.
Yeah, it was very different. Mine was different than his, but I wasn't riding shotgun with him on the way to the rib house to have beers with him. But bought him a shot either way.
Coming up, Chad and I do some taste testing for the Craft Brewers Conference that's in town here in Nashville with Yeehaw Brewing Company, one of our hosts here at 6th and Peabody, along with Old Smoky Moonshine. And there's a familiar face with the NBA who recently passed away that will tie in with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the impact that he had in such a short amount of time of his life. That's next on Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number 1 pet peeve, telemarketers. Number 2 pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number 3 pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number 4 pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care. My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back, and if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Glad you're with us. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. We'll be tasting some of the Yeehaw brews on tap here all week for the Craft Brewing Conference, which is off to a great success, packed with people across the globe, suppliers, vendors, brewers, and they do it great here with Yeehaw across the state of Tennessee and South Carolina.
We've got 2 more to try here today.
Yeah, we do. In just a moment. But so, Chad, Nick Gilbert was 14-year-old Nick Gilbert at the time, son of the Cleveland Cavaliers owner, asked what's not to like whenever he was asked about, why his dad chose him as his hero. He suffered from NF1, and there is no cure. He passed away over the weekend. But he was always the person that was representing the Cavs for the NBA draft lottery.
Yep.
And he had this luck to him, where they would end up with, they didn't always have the best odds for the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick, but they'd end up getting that pick. And the top pick went to Nick. And the awareness and the fundraising that went behind the diagnosis and the disease that he suffered from, a genetic condition, and it causes non-cancerous tumors to grow in the brain and the spinal cord. No cure, and he passed away at 26 over the weekend. By the way, just let me share this story real quick. My grandparents, my grandmother passed away last year, final grandparent to pass away. Grandfather died in 2019. We auctioned off their estate. We had an estate sale over the weekend. And I think the big fear with that was, there's going to be someone that comes in. It's a 7-acre plot of land. Maybe they take down the home that they built, and they either...
The family farm home.
Yeah, well, yeah. For them, it wasn't the farm. It was just their land. And it's like, they bulldoze the house and they somehow, they either farm it or they turn it into a subdivision or whatever, Not the case. There was a gentleman who was all about wanting to see the home for a couple of weeks, crawling underneath the house to see the good bone structure, right?
Going into the crawl space.
Turns out he was living in a 900 square foot home, he and his wife and 5 kids. And they bought this house, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom. I mean, it's a small house. And the tears on their faces, and they were boasting about now having 2 bathrooms, puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
For all of the clickbait material that's out there, and everyone wanting to live through whatever's viral at the moment, and putting a headline at the bottom of a screen so that someone will click on it, to me, that was real. And it put things in perspective for me of, comparing this to that, someone's always got it better than you, and there are tons of people that have it worse than you. And for that day, that family had a better day than I did, and for no reason whatsoever, I went into that day better off than they were.
Yeah.
But they had a better day.
Well, it's a great story, and one that also proves that something bad happened with your grandmother passing away.
Right.
And that's a tragic thing for family, regardless of age.
Well, the decision
especially for
with the property.
Especially for your mom and her sister, right?
Right.
And all
no
the
doubt.
memories of that property. And the fear is, this is going to lead to such a bad thing. It's going to be sold to a developer. Someone's going to come in and tear the house down, and it leads to a great thing. So out of the tragedy of that loss, something great spawned for that family, and now a bunch of memories for that family that's moving in. Very cool.
And his name's John. He sent a text that said, my kids haven't stopped talking about the house today. With the house for my wife and now the bowl, he wanted his mother to have this bowl for Mother's Day. I'm set for the best Mother's Day of my life. Thank you for the legacy of happy memories that we will inherit within those walls.
That's awesome.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
It was a perfect weekend. So cheers to the new family at Sunny Acres, and cheers to
Cheers to John.
So this right here, cheers to John.
John.
Yeah. So this right here, Chad, if we get this right, is the Hip Hop's Hazy IPA from Greenville, South Carolina, 100% Carolina malt, and it's hopped with a New Zealand hop. A soft mouthfeel, it says, with tropical flavors and aromas. Your thoughts?
I was going to say this tastes a little bit like Flight of the Conchords. Who's from New Zealand. So, delicious.
I like that. I like that. The Hip Hop's Hazy IPA, New England style. And to the right, we have the Citrus Slapper IPA. It's a fruited IPA, Chad, this is the tangy tangerine finish. Bold citrus hops with a note of tangerine.
Oh, this I can taste the tangerine.
Are you allergic?
No, I wasn't expecting breakfast when I sipped it. I feel like I'm at like a high-end breakfast in a hotel somewhere.
Chad's now
that's
going to
serving
have
some sort of fruit juice.
He's going to have an allergic reaction. I'm going to stab him with an EpiPen.
All right, guys, this has been my final show. I'll die after drinking the rest of this. Good night, everyone. No, this is good.
A good way to end it. And thanks to Yeehaw for making what's been a fun week happen for us, where we can try the different things for all of their locations.
Cheers, Hutton.
Yeah, cheers, Chad. Appreciate you and all the great staff.
Cheers to John and the family of
no
5
doubt.
moving into the house.
So you've got the Craft Brewers Conference going on, but you have locations for Yeehaw, Nashville, Greenville, Johnson City, Knoxville. Check them out wherever you are across those 2 states, and you can find it on retail throughout the country. We're back right here at 6th and Peabody, home of Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine, 3 o'clock Eastern tomorrow across the OutKick Network.